This is the speaker's row, is it? No, it wasn't answer, but there is.
Roll call, please. Here.
Here.
Here. Yeah, here.
Here.
Rivera,
Here.
Rivera.
Yeah. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Bernardsville News and Charter News, filed with the municipal clerk and posted on the municipal bulletin board on December 27th, 2021. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Chris Schmidt, where are you? And Benson, you want to come up? No, yeah, Lord. I'm very pleased to have these two gentlemen come forward. We have spent about a year working on putting together a foundation for law enforcement so that people can make contributions to a 501c3, and they have, these are two of the volunteers who are on the board, and I would love for them to tell us a little about it so the community knows that this is now available.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Seems like you have a busy night, so I'll make this quick. I'll first read our mission statement, and then we'll do a little question and answer about what we're all about. So the Vernonville Law Enforcement Foundation seeks to provide support to local law enforcement by offering educational training, equipment, and technology that will help reduce crime, increase officer safety, and improve community relations. Our goal is to help law enforcement officers protect and serve citizens of the Bernardsville community. So what does that mean? As you folks know more than anybody in the room, that there's a budget and it's stretched more and more thin every year. And while we have somewhat sufficient funds to keep everything going on a regular basis, there's always these things that are on wish lists and things that we'd like to have that the budget doesn't allow or can't afford. So as you mentioned, we have come together as a bunch of local citizens, and sole purpose is to raise money to get some of these punch list items and things that you can't always get to the police officers that they want or need. And we're having some events coming up over the course of the year. We have one that's, I don't know, we're almost full yet, Benny, but we're getting there. We're having a ski shoot at Flint Hill soon, and we plan to have many other events to raise money. So I don't know, Chief, you want to add anything to that? Yes.
So as you know, we've been working on this for quite a while, the administrator and myself and members of the board, Mayor. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the support. You know, we have an incredible amount of support from the police department in Bernardsville. Our local community is always behind us. They're always willing to step up and help us out. And the officers, on behalf of all the officers, we truly appreciate that. Benny and Chris, thank you very much for your support. It goes without saying that the officers' gratitude is great. And you know, we're happy to have residents behind us because we're here for you and we're here for the people in our community. And it's nice to know that the people in the community are here for us in return. So thank you for that. You know, we're going to be working with the foundation to identify those items that I think are of most need that the officers have identified as being in need of. And you know, we don't always have the money. We can't stretch the dollar that far to get the right kind of equipment and training that we always need. They've already supported the training of 3 officers in school security techniques and advanced school security concepts at a conference down in Orlando. That was very informative. They provided support already for the awards ceremony that we did last year for the officers at the end of the year. They've also made some other contributions already. I know there's a few other things that they've done. I don't know if you remember that.
The one kind of interesting or exciting thing is that some some families in the borough have foundations or trusts that can only give money to nonprofit organizations. So one family stepped forward and they asked to remain anonymous, but they gave us a check of about $6,000 in order to have state-of-the-art defibrillators ready to go when it comes time to replace them. So this also is a great vehicle for holding those types of donations.
So Chris, you're gonna make sure, it hasn't made it to me yet. We get all the information, we can put it on the website, it can go everywhere.
You have a website, don't you?
The foundation has a website. I don't think we can put it on the borough website. There is separate organization supporting the borough and the police department. You know, there's a separate 501c3. They're not officially affiliated with the police department, but they are supporting us.
So we can support you personally, so please make sure to make the website.
We have to forward it to all of you. One last thing is that the trip was Orlando, right? Okay, was a conference on school shootings, how to handle those kind of things. So I thought it was money well spent. And I think everyone would be happy to know that our officers are trained in such an event. God forbid it ever happens here.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for your time.
For those who don't know, Chris Smith is a former council member.
I miss those days. Midnight.
Right, thank you. Next on our agenda is our open session for items that are not listed for a public hearing, which are just the ordinances. If you would like to speak, and this is for the people on Zoom, please use the raise your hand icon so that Anthony, our clerk, can see it. And wait till he recognizes you or I recognize you. When you want to speak, please give your name and address and limit your comment to 3 minutes. And Anthony also has the timer. So he will be timing it at 3 minutes. Please note, this is not a time for debate. It's an opportunity for the public to make a comment. If you have a question, we will record it and we will get back to you with an answer. We also ask that your comments be respectful to everyone that is present. And any issue that you feel you need more time to talk about, our borough administrator and myself would be happy to schedule a time to meet with you. So, yes.
Just one housekeeping item, Mayor. We were experimenting with the technology to constantly improve upon it. For those who are watching on YouTube, there is a time delay. And what I'd like to point out is if more than one person is speaking, so if we're speaking over each other, that can at times get garbled depending on how many people are on.
Yeah.
So it's very important that that not happen. And we tried to designate this area in front of the gentleman with the burgundy shirt as the best spot for things to get conveyed to the audience at home.
Okay.
Not necessary, but it's the best one.
Yeah. So if anyone would like to comment that's here present, please come over to this area so that we can make sure it gets on the recording for people who couldn't come and would like to watch or are watching at home. And this is recorded so you can watch it tomorrow if you want. So we want to make sure everybody can hear. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Anything that's on the agenda that doesn't have its own public hearing, which is just the first couple of ordinances. No, I don't think anything's on. Fence ordinance. Oh, just the fence ordinance.
Anything other than.
Anything other than the fence ordinance you would like to comment on.
So if you're here to talk about development, now's your time.
Anybody on Zoom? And this is our first meeting of the month, which is a work meeting. And so this is the only open session. There's not a second one like we do at the second meeting. No.
Hi, my name's Lorraine.
Oh, Lorraine, come on.
My name is Lorraine Gilbert, 84 Mendham Road, Bernardsville. And just a point of clarification, are we talking about open comments for anything on the agenda, or do we want to wait until?
No, there's no opportunity later.
Okay.
This is the only. open
Then I'm going to, if everyone's okay, I'm going to start off. I came here to support Sari and the Bagel Bin in their concerns about the potential redevelopment for the Bagel Bin area and the Palmer properties. I do see it's an item on the agenda. My concern, specific to Sari and the Bagel Bin, but also to much of the redevelopment proposals in Bernardsville, is they seem to be an agenda looking to redevelop Bernardsville without enough input from the people who are part of the process, whether they're business people who own the properties or work in the properties or live in the community. And I'd like to make sure that as we move forward with these things, that we not use things like eminent domain or property in need of redevelopment as a very large hammer that might other be adjusted, otherwise be addressed by using things like existing borough standards to make sure that properties are upkept. And we separate that from long-term and strategic ideas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And just a reminder to please state your name and your address.
We should do. Okay. Yes, I've seen you in the blue shirt over here.
Hello, everyone. Steve Tobin. I live at 31 Ambar Place. I've been a Bernardsville resident for over 20 years. And let me just give you a scenario. Since the summer has just come to an end, a lot of people, I'm sure, went to the beach. That is the Jersey Shore. Imagine investing a lot of time and effort, and you finally get that beach house. You buy a beach house right there on the ocean. It's the ideal spot. For conversation's sake, let's say it's Lavalette, New Jersey. And then not long after you buy this great beach house right there on the beach, or I should say right before the beach, the Lavalette Town Council says, the beach is closed. We're going to be setting up condominiums right here on the sand, right on the beach. So the beach is closed. And you're like, the reason I chose to move to Lavalette was so I could be right on the beach. And you're cutting that off. How could you do that? That's why I wanted to move to Lavalette, is because of its great access to the ocean. Case in point, I understand what's going on here in Bernardsville. There's talk of excessive condominiums, apartments, whatever, being put up here. I have nothing against it, condominiums and apartments and that sort of thing, but I don't want it to take away from the distinctive character of what Bernardsville is and always has been. If you want bigger buildings like that, go to Summit.
Yeah.
Go to Morristown.
Please don't do that because it really is confusing for the people that are home. No comments, please, while someone's speaking.
So if you want something like that, go to Somerville, go to Morristown, go to Summit. But one of the distinctive things about Bernardsville is that it has the small town feeling to it. And that's one of the biggest points of attraction to this area. Case in point, I have a book here, Among the Blue Hills, Bernardsville, A History, which is actually written by a number of prominent Bernardsville residents. Someone by the name of Bedwell, someone by the name of Anderson. You may have heard of somebody by the name of Olcott. Just read one little.
You've got 50 seconds left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Sorry. Okay, I am very photogenic. This is just one little excerpt from the book. And I quote, however, the lengthening shadow of the metropolis threatens to pull Bernardsville into a suburban orbit and destroy the borough's rural character. Can the qualities that gave Bernardsville its distinctiveness, as shown by this book right here, this book be preserved, and so to encourage its future generations to preserve these traditions and achievements which were created by the Bernardsville community. This was written back in the 60s, some greater than 50 years ago. I don't want to lose that now. I mean that sincerely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Riley. I am a resident here at 67 Child Road, and actually been pretty much a lifelong resident here in and out of Bernardsville with my family, my brother, my sister-in-law, my grandchildren, and everybody. And we like Bernardsville the way it is. If I wanted to live in Summit or I wanted to live somewhere else, I would find that place. We live here. My parents chose here. We love it here. And like the gentleman just said, it's the beauty of what makes Bernardsville. But I have a couple statements. You put together a council that read and did a year of research, a board or whatever, planning board, and they decided against this. I don't understand why you didn't take their advice, why you have to change all that. And if this is so important, you used the word control in our last meeting. I'm trying to understand what you're trying to control. Are you trying to control us, the town, how it lives, how we all live, what happens here? What is that control that you're talking about? Yes, there are some easements on the property there. There's a New Jersey Water Company thing that runs right through. Are you seeking to control all of that? I don't understand. And maybe you can explain that to us. Respectfully, I would like to understand if these are all going to be apartments that you're talking about putting in here, and those people in apartments rent, and the gentleman who owns a building probably doesn't pay taxes, but I'm not 100% sure about that. All those kids are going to go to our schools, which is wonderful, but they're not paying any taxes. So who is paying for those children? And why are you following a developer down this road when majority, I think people I've talked to in town, nobody really wants this. So why are we doing this? What is the reason? If somebody can explain that to me and give me a solid reason, then maybe I would listen. But you have not, in any of the conversations that we've had, I have not heard one solid reason why this needs to be done. The traffic would be worse. We would have this monstrosity of a building in the center of our town. I don't think it would draw people to us. I think it would push them away. I want to live in Bernardsville. I want Bernardsville to remain Bernardsville. And I think a lot of other people do too. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Neil Shetnick. I live at 2079 Avenue in Vernonville, lived here for 35 years. I looked over the H3 and all the other overlay zones you made. Over here on that area, you're putting 26 on a fairly large road, which is understandable for your car obligation. You're putting 12 units on Mount Airy. That's problematic for the traffic. You're putting 22 units on Bernards Avenue, which is a postage stamp of a lot, and the width of the street is 20 feet. How are you going to get 22 cars in there? I don't understand the logic of putting a 22 unit property on a postage stamp. The other thing is that anywhere I live, if you have low income rental units, property values don't go up. Okay, on the mountain, 5 acres gives you about $70,000 in taxes. In Little Italy, it gives you $800,000 in taxes. If that property value goes down, where are you going to make up that tax dollar? You're going to raise our taxes. That's the only way you can do it. Thank you.
Just if I could make a comment on affordable housing, that's already, I mean, was all established, I think even before most of these council people were here. It was settled by the courts and is now the planning board is in charge of that. So there is nothing at this point that the council is involved in with affordable housing. That is, the planning board is deciding the site plan and those issues. So just to kind of, if anybody else is coming up about that, you really want to be at the planning board.
Maureen Sharetta, Center Street Extension. We've been residents for about 55 years in Bernardsville. I mean, know what you said, that it's out of your hands, but what about the traffic part of it? Center Street, then Bernards Avenue is one of the heavily traveled and on our side of town. Excuse me, I get choked up. The units you're talking about is going to bring more traffic down Bernards Avenue, which is in a terrible state right now, needs to be repaved. What's going to happen to us? More traffic with the low and moderate. Same with Ammerman, more traffic on Mount Airy Road. It's just going to be a bottleneck and more traffic for the people who live on the south side of town.
Thank you, Maureen. For those of you who live there at the, on the agenda tonight, we are approving the bonding to do Bernards Ave and the Bernards Ave neighborhoods, not just a paving, but we're rebuilding that whole road so that it can handle those heavy trucks and landscaping vehicles that go down there. So we will be, we're approving the bonding tonight. It'll probably go out to bid in November. So hopefully we can start that project next spring. Is that the goal? So yeah, because we do recognize that all those roads were not built for the kind of traffic they have now. So we will be doing drainage and curbing and really rebuilding them so they can support that. Thank you, Maureen. Yes, thanks.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Shepard. I live at 16 Ambar Place in Bernardsville, right off of Mount Airy. I have to say I've allowed myself to be uneducated about this whole process, and I apologize for that. But there's no time like the present to ask questions. And one of my questions is, how many units are we talking about for people to live in? And how many estimated children will be going to schools in Bernardsville? Do you all know?
Like I said before, this is just for you to comment. We're not going to,
We can address questions later,
yeah,
not at this point in the.
just so I want to make sure everybody.
I'm writing it.
Later tonight or later another day or
We
later
can address
next
later
month?
tonight.
Later tonight, I just want to give everybody.
Oh, okay, well, then I'll just go into the part of where I'd like to say that I chose Bernardsville 14 years ago and live in a little 120-year-old house in a town that I can walk safely around. Yes, there are not shopping centers in the midst of town. There are not boutiques and whatnot in every single storefront in town. But what we have is a bucolic town in what is still a bucolic area of New Jersey. It's not like people think of New Jersey when you take the turnpike up to New York. That's not what we're living in. I can't even imagine having, for instance, the the apartments that were going to be built in the train station parking lot. That was nixed. That's not happening. Well, I'd like to see it not happen on the other side of town. That's my vote.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Toma. I live at 38 Bernards Avenue. And similarly, I would say I'm a little uneducated about this particular redevelopment. So what I would ask is that we provide clarity. I'm hearing a ton of speculation here tonight. I'm not hearing facts. So I would ask, when you get to the point where you make this vote, that there's clarity on what we're doing. If it's a private transaction, if it's a private sale, if it's a private owner, what is the vote tonight? Because there's too much swirl and speculation, and I want to have clarity and understand the facts.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
hopefully we will.
I hope so.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
One other point, just to, sorry, I'm still Steve Tobin, still from Vernonville. Just a point that was brought up before, forget the gentleman's name, but he was the first one to bring up, I guess, the traffic issues. And the response that you gave, Ms. Mayor, was that, no, that's not your decision, it's for the planning board. That's ironic because wasn't it the planning board that is against this, that voted against it 6-1?
Yeah.
So it's their decision, but it's not, so you only take their advice when it's accountable and it's acceptable to you? So how does this work? I understand you'll need time to think of an answer for this because I'm putting you on the spot right now.
No, it's
Awkward,
really,
isn't
it's a sense of checks and balance. One.
When does it work? When does it not?
I think please respectful, we want to be respectful to everyone, okay, thank you. No, it's maybe our attorney can explain how it works.
Or am I gonna need an attorney?
I think the mayor was referring to the affordable housing project, he was talking about
Yes.
planning board, which that the affordable housing project, so all before the planning board.
Right.
This redevelopment project on the Palmer property is before the council and it's on the next agenda.
Right, but nonetheless, so they're two different projects, but why is it with one project, you are gonna use the planning board's decision? But then with this other project, you're not.
So what
It's
you
a
said,
different law.
so
It's
that
under a different law.
so they have to have the deliberation, and deliberation comes to council. But we deliberate on it, it's a sequence of events that happens. So after they make whatever decision they make, those decisions come here, either for ratification or for. And this is also a
But
new
they
project,
need-
affordable,
Please don't speak out.
this is a new development we're speaking of, whereas affordable housing has been discussed for both the council and the planning board for the 5 or 6 years.
Joe. can you answer this?
If you want, so the difference is, just for the record, Joe DeMarco, redevelopment council for the borough. The difference is that you're now at the site plan application part of the affordable housing. So the council years ago decided those other properties, the Hammerman lot, the Vernon Avenue lot, those were all vetted already. They're in a different process. Process for tonight is really the initial study to declare an area. And that goes to the planning board to conduct the hearing. They conduct a hearing, they issue a recommendation, they take all the testimony, that comes back to the council. And the council has, under the law, 3 opportunities to either accept it, reject it, or modify it. That's the process.
Thank you.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but isn't it?
no, come on up, please. We have to come up and give you
Sorry.
state your address.
You know, like Mr. Tobin, I'm still Cheryl Riley, and I live at 67, but I'm confused. We had a meeting. We were all there were 250 people on Zoom, we weren't allowed to be in person. So what happened to that meeting? We all talked about it, everybody had their comments, the board listened, and the board voted that night, and it was 6-1.
The board voted on a recommendation,
They recommended no,
and they send that recommendation to the council.
correct,
And the council now gets to do one of 3 things.
understood, but
So then there's no
they
confusion.
hadn't done that.
No, I did not say they didn't do
Am I the one who heard that?
that. That's not what I said.
Okay,
What I
so
said
they
is
made
they-
the recommendation, these guys have it now,
Correct.
and so it's up to them.
Yes.
Okay, all right, just wanted to be clear on all of that, thank you very much. So it's up to you guys.
Eddie Zervigon, Bliss Road, Mendham, New Jersey. I spent the past 20 years serving on public and private boards. I currently serve on 2 public boards and am the chairman of the governance committee of a multi-billion-dollar energy company, so I know governance. This whole debate is about process, transparency, and good governance. The concerns that have been brought regarding the potential for the town council to go against the recommendation of the planning board really crystallizes the unease that you hear many of these in opposition to this redevelopment plan have. Why in the world would you go against the thoughtful recommendations and the 4 hours that many of us spent on that evening, right? Where some on the council weren't even on the call, have not heard the call as of a couple of weeks ago. To me, it just makes no sense. I think it would be helpful to poll each of the council members and the mayor to find out exactly what they know in terms of a potential plan. Have you seen renderings? Has there been a discussion on project specifics and any negotiations, regardless of how preliminary? Have you had specific discussions with any of the principals at Advanced Realty on this redevelopment effort? Since we could do this under oath and it'd be discoverable in court, I think this could go a long way to restoring the faith in a transparent process, which is what we are asking for. Even if the use of an area in need of redevelopment is a misguided principle in Bernardsville under this plan. Thank you.
Mark Malillo, 210 Campbell Road. And just before I start, I think it would be appropriate to just make a statement before I start. For those who don't know me, I'm a 50-year resident of Bernardsville, and I've recently entered the process of running for mayor. I'd like to make my comments tonight, but before I do so, I'd like to say three things. One, I do not own nor have ever owned any property in the downtown. My son does through Malillo Equities. Two, I am not an owner, a member, an employee of Malillo Equities. That's my son's company. And lastly, my son has committed not to becoming the master developer under any circumstances. So I've made those points tonight because I am about to say something in my comments that should be unbiased and totally from my heart. So I want the board to hear that before I start. Okay. Tonight, I won't take the time to directly speak about the Palmer properties. The planning board has spoken, the people have spoken, and even our history speaks for itself. Instead, I like to focus my attention on the former mayor, the freeholder, Peter Palmer. For those who don't know, the Palmers have been a part of this town for decades. Peter Palmer has started his political career at the young age of 25, where he served as a school board member. 6 years later, in 1968, he was elected to the town council. His political career continued as he served as our mayor from 1985 to 1994. Following those years of service, Peter went on to serve as the Somerset County freeholder. All in all, Peter Palmer served on our local and county government for 55 years. Over his political career, Peter Palmer has countless awards for his excellence in service, such as being honored by the Somerset County Employees Legislative Committee, as well as the Bernards Township Committee. Councilwoman Carol Bianchi once said at the awards dinner, Peter Palmer has been the face of Somerset County government for decades. His contributions are so many, but it is safe to say that his impact will be felt by generations to come. But in my mind, Peter Palmer's most successful accomplishment that still fascinates me today is his successful negotiation and subsequent purchase of the 100-acre property called Natterock. This property, perfectly preserved park, was once the estate of the King of Morocco. However, upon the king's death, this 500-acre jewel, with its outstanding mansion, sat vulnerable for redevelopment. As the county freeholder, Peter Palmer, in 2003, successfully purchased the estate for $22 million. Not only did he purchase the county, not only did he purchase this, but he stopped the potential development by national home builders such as Toll Brothers, Ryan Homes, and Hovnanian. But he also created a public-private partnership lease for the portion of land, ensuring the repositioning and repurposing of the mansion and future expansion endeavors such as restaurants, hotels, spas, and private residences. Today, we all know that as 90 acres. So tonight, I am appealing to the council and the mayor to be sure, but mainly to the man that bears the name of the property that we are all discussing tonight. Mr. Palmer, you obviously love this town. You have lived here for decades. Currently, you have lived only footsteps from the property. You pass it every day as you walk to the coffee shop. Your 55 years of public service have made you an expert in municipal land use, redevelopment, and land preservation. So with that knowledge,
and the good you have done for Somerset County, why not end your career and galvanize your legacy with something that will stand the test of time?
Mark, your time is up.
You see,
I don't my time. You can take my 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Am I allowed to do that? Is that, can I? Something that will be appreciated for generations. Something that all the people of any age could use and benefit from. We all know that buildings could come and go, but I believe, Mr. Palmer, you have another option, another solution, a solution that is in the same line of thinking that you have built your career on. A solution that will solve the traffic congestion, a solution that will bring much needed green space to our town center, a solution that will solve the almost non-existent parking for businesses that surround our Alcott Square, a solution that will solve the vacant storefronts and tenant instability, a solution that will bring jobs and much needed revitalization to our downtown. Mr. Palmer, with your help, your property can be the first flame that will ignite a series of well thought out, repurposing of our downtown. This is the property that the town needs. Nothing has changed here in 50 years, but that's a good thing because now we could look at the mistakes that other towns have rushed to do with redevelopment, only to bring themselves now to the unmanageable traffic, overstressed utilities and municipal services, as well as a population explosion in their schools. My proposal to you, Mr. Palmer, is simple. It's not to develop your property, but it's to preserve and repurpose your property. This plan, when implemented properly, would be consistent with all the same values, goals, and standards that you have implemented throughout the county for the past 55 years. The proposal, speaking in simple terms, would be to create a public park with community parking. At a high level, we would realign the curb for better sight lines and traffic flow, widen the sidewalks for pedestrian-friendly foot traffic, install benches, seating, and bike racks for public interaction, install a flagpole with manicured landscaping to honor our nation, redo the parking lot to provide adequate spaces for visitors and business support, redo the entrance, exit, and for safety of ease access, and construct 2 small 1,700 square foot historically appropriate buildings to support retail activity. And finally, Mr. Palmer, we would create an area dedicated to honoring Peter Palmer for his years of service, not only for our town, but for our county. Palmer Park will stand tribute for generations to come. I realize this proposal will cost money, but when things are that important, people somehow find a way to get it done. If we run into trouble, we can always take a page from Peter Palmer's playbook, especially the chapter where he found $22 million to save our local community from an overdeveloped sea of homes. So let's work together to fund this project, to stimulate the right type of growth, to revitalize Alcott Square and the business district to the south, and lastly, to honor our faithful civil servant, Peter Palmer. There are some people that might disagree. There are some that say that we need to move ahead with this redevelopment and build this ominous traffic clogging, tax avoiding project. I say less is more. I say giving back is better than receiving. I say pause tonight and vote later and let the council come back with the economics for this option and maybe some other option. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Malone, have you given that letter to Mr. Palmer? Because you were addressing him and he's not here.
No, I wrote this today after praying about it all weekend, and if you'd like me to, I can get this to him. I
Also,
actually have a
we
copy.
need a copy for the record, so if
Yeah.
you could give our clerk a copy, that
I
would be
do.
good. So that we have it in the record. I see Johanna Lissinger is on Zoom. Johanna, are you there? Yes, Johanna Whittinger, Washington Corner Road, Bernardsville. This is a little scary because I have a little different view here, but I want to preface mine too. I kind of made mine short so it fit into 3 minutes. I didn't know I could have more, but I want to say I have no special interests. I'm not a personal friend of council members. I respect that whole process. But I would want to give you a viewpoint from me. I want to endorse a yes vote by the members of this Congress for the determination of need for improvement on this property. I think the buck stops there. You are the ultimately responsible people for. This is my reasons. Benefits to this municipality have been clearly explained to the public by Mr. Chinecki, Board Administrator, Special Attorney, Mr. DeMarco, our downtown attorney for development of our downtown. I think that there is no criticism for not being transparent. There have been multiple meetings. There's been information on our website. I believe the prime responsibility of this council is to make important decisions to promote thriving downtown businesses, all of them. I believe we should use every tool available that will aid in promoting smart development consistent with our goals that councils, that's plural, and committees of business owners and residents have given much thought and time to. The need has been recognized for a long time. I've lived in this community for over a half a century. I came here because I loved the quaintness of Bernardsville. I've watched populations increase and development, and I empathize with the beachfront idea, with the concerns that that some of the residents have expressed tonight. A thriving commercial center attracts businesses. Filled stores attract more shoppers. Benefits are multiplied with increased profits, which affects better maintenance, more jobs, more inventory. Residents have the convenience of and all the advantages of shopping locally. I do not know that there were definite plans for how this would be developed. I believe a tenant-landlord lease serves both parties. At the term's end, a landlord has the right to redevelop or sell. A tenant has the right to relocate or retire. Councils play no part in these decisions. I believe this property is a candidate for determination of improvement. I think we are missing the point if we dwell on what were some of the statements from the planning board. I went to all the meetings that were available. This is a prime downtown location. And I think there is certainly room for improvement for access to it. Making that left-hand turn, it's from Anderson to 202. It's less than 90 degrees. It's on a curve. If somebody has an idea of how to redevelop and improve this, I think we should. I believe there are real challenges to our downtown. So making the wisest decision for Bernardsville requires knowing and using all the tools available. And we heard that over and over again. The word tools. Yes.
Yeah, let her know.
Yeah.
Johanna.
Just so you know, it's a complication.
Yeah, it's like, how much of a delay is it? 7 seconds, 10 seconds?
Yeah, well, it's sort of one person's talking and then somebody else talks at the same time. You won't hear. Stop.
Really, we have to be mindful of the technology's limitations.
Yeah, can you unmute so we can just say something to the whole country?
No, so Johanna, they had to mute you because we were well over the 3 minutes and there's a lag. So I apologize for that. But Anthony had to put you with mute. So if you're on Zoom, please sort of keep an eye if you see Anthony waving.
He's not showing up in mine. The technology has improved. I see 3 frames, but I cannot see Anthony.
I'm on the monitor.
Maybe if I'm looking at 4 of the people, maybe if you knocked out one of them. You can get Anthony in. Okay. Anyhow, I'm sorry that you didn't hear me. I'm certainly sorry I went over the 3 minutes. I thought I was much shorter than some, but I guess not. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Oh, hi. Sorry, I think you're, okay, there we go. Thank you so much. The camera's not flattering. Hi, my name is Jen Zerbagon. I'm from Mendham, New Jersey. I have worked in Bernardsville for many years. I volunteer in Bernardsville. I send my kids to schools in Bernardsville, and I shop almost daily in Bernardsville. So that's why I'm here. So members of the town council, you work very hard. And by the way, I've been to all the meetings. And you've probably seen me, I've talked a lot on them too, but I'm heavily researched on these matters. And I've spent a lot of personal time on it too, because I care about what happens in this town. So you have worked very hard to sway the public into believing that the designation of an area in need of redevelopment is a common and safe method to improve towns. I truly don't believe that you've made it clear to the public, your constituents, that it is in fact a very contentious tool, excuse me, that has resulted in lawsuits across New Jersey for years and taxpayer pain. Here are some of the reasons why this rule is so controversial. For those of you who are kind of new to it, this is being designated an area in need of redevelopment, and these are the complications around it that other towns have suffered through. Number 1, tax money. The law for an area in need of redevelopment permits the developer to make a payment in lieu of taxes, a pilot. This is highly controversial across all of these areas because unlike ordinary tax payments, in lieu of means that they go directly to the municipality, as somebody else spoke about earlier. That means the county and your board of education therefore does not get any money whatsoever for this property for a period of time. So I want to ask you guys, does your board of education understand this? Does the Vernonville's parents and teachers understand this? Number 2, lawsuits. Areas in need of redevelopment is a very controversial tool across New Jersey. There have been lawsuits and claims of misuse across the state. The number 1 reason for most of these lawsuits is simply that the area in question does not qualify. The latest big lawsuit, in fact, was just last month with Mawa versus Sheridan, where Sheridan claimed that the area did not qualify. And it was very similar to us because they were pointing out minor issues and claimed that this qualified for this fancy tool. Your own planning board has told you that this area does not meet the criteria. Lawsuits that was to be paid for by the taxpayers of Bernardsville will happen because you want more control. Number 3, money for the developer and the landlord. If you overruled your planning board tonight, you are giving the developer an extremely valuable asset, the pilot tax benefit. Guess who else benefits from that pilot tax? The landlord that you and your hired professionals have carefully pointed out over the last several meetings has not maintained their property. Their lack of maintenance has put the safety of the people of Bernardsville at risk for years. And now you'll be rewarding them by making their property more valuable with this tool because you want control. Fact number 4, disregarding the planning board's near unanimous vote sets a dangerous precedent for this council. This would strip power from your independent planning board and consolidate it within the town council. Hooray, more control for you. You have spent so much time with the public telling them the control your town council will get. You have not adequately, the last person ran over, I'd like 20 more seconds. You have not adequately informed them of these tremendous risks. The lawsuits, the generous tax benefits to a wealthy developer and a negligent landlord. We urge you to please be honest with your constituents about the tremendous risk and uncertainty your decision will have tonight if you vote against your own planning board. Your obsession with greater control is hurting the people of Bernardsville. Okay, thank you.
I'm 1523 Finance in Bernardsville. I live in Bernardsville and I work at the
I'm here tonight because there's somebody's fault with impact, my job and my family situation. Could you say that? Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I'm so nervous. I never done this before, so I have. So yes, I'm paying attention. I know that development can happen at any time and the landlord can kick us out. For some reason, against reality in the landlord are winning until this, maybe because they have some kind of benefits, like financial benefits. I have sat through the last several calls and the long call with the planning where they vote to not make this an area in need of redevelopment. It was 4 hours of discussing budget put in a bad place, no fresh paint, and a bumping parking, and deciding that those small things can be fixed without this preservation. Now you sound like you want to go against this vote, mainly because you want more control. I'm sure you have good intentions. But just because you want control, that does not mean that the area is in need of redevelopment. Your desire for control will make development move faster and make it much more likely that the vehicle will feel close. I just want you to see my face. So you know one of the people who will be devastated by you overruling your own planning.
Gonna take somebody on Zoom, Rick Rodriguez. Just so we balance it out a little bit. Rich Rodriguez, are you on?
Can you hear me?
There you are, okay.
Great, thank you, council, for listening to some of us on Zoom. Not all of us can be there this evening as we're home with our families, but I appreciate all of your time and all of the residents who are there and making this a priority. I did take some time myself to try to better understand this Palmer situation as it was being talked about in public forum. I went down and lived nearby, walked downtown, often was having a hard time getting around the corner, understanding what building was trying to be protected there and preserved. And what I saw was an area that looked like it needed redevelopment. You know, there was always a traffic nightmare at that light. It was impossible for me to walk. It's unsafe when I go jogging around the corner. I run into a telephone pole almost every time I go around the corner there. So it is something that I think would be important for us as a community, as residents, to redevelop. And so when I think of it from that perspective, and I think about the fact that the town has an opportunity to have an important say in one of the most important pieces of our town, right in the center, I hope that the council will use their foresight and potentially overrule the planning board because they realize the significance of this and the impact that it could have on all of us as residents. And I also want to reference, I think it was Steve made a mention about, imagine if you bought a property at the beach and then somewhere along the line, someone came and changed it. Well, I will use that example for myself. Is one of the things that attracted me to Bernardsville a few years ago was knowing that this redevelopment process was already kicked off. There's so many great things going on with the downtown Bernardsville group and all of those things. So I really wanted to say that in my case, it was an area of, hey, this is great that there's already a wonderful town and there's already these other plans in place to make it even better and to fill some of these empty storefronts and make it a place that's a destination for us as residents to walk down to. So I want to throw my support behind the council and overruling the planning board. Thank you.
Rich, can you just give your address? I don't think you did.
Oh, sorry, 29 Maple Village.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
That's funny. That's funny.
We got.
Okay, Sari Mason, 15 Oakmont Road, Benton, New Jersey, 37 Arcot Square, Burns. Good evening, Mayor Knows and members of the council. I will try to put 30 years into 3 minutes. My name is Sari Mason, and this is my husband, David. We are the owners of the Bagel Bin, a family-owned business which has served the community for 30 years. Throughout the years, we have been proud to support local fundraisers, events for Vernonville schools, churches, organizations, among many others. We also are passionate supporters of the Bernardsville Police, Rescue, and Fire Departments, and for years have sponsored events to honor local veterans who are near and dear to our hearts. Our customers have truly become our family. That is why there is a collection can on our counter to support the Valerie Center to help children in our community battling cancer. We are humble but proud of the work we have done to support everyone in Vernonville. We survived Hurricane Sandy. We survived the closure of Mount Airy Road. And while the past couple of years have been very challenging for our business due to COVID pandemic, thanks to our loyal customers, we have come back stronger. While we thought the worst was over, another challenge has surfaced. Peter Cocosiello Jr. of Advanced Realty. With his sites on Palmer Properties, he's positioned our mayor and council to seek a project through a process called redevelopment designation. Fortunately, these properties did not qualify as unanimously confirmed by our planning board. They were never blighted or in need of redevelopment. They simply lack some overdue maintenance. We understand that the Palmers have the right to develop or sell their property, but should not be able to sidestep our planning board. If the site is ever to be developed, it should be developed using the borough's recently updated downtown zoning laws, and the developer must follow the traditional municipality land use law process by submitting an application to the land use board. Lastly, I must say that my family and I have been heartbroken that 30 years of business comes down to this decision. We simply want our business to survive. We want to continue to serve this community. To everybody here tonight, please realize our business is on the chopping block with this vote. We can only hope the council upholds the planning board's decision and put an end to a year of needless stress and pain. With all this being said, Mayor Canos, being that this process has become so divisive for our town, I ask you tonight, will you waive your vote if the council has a split decision?
Let me just clarify, I don't get to vote.
If there's a tie, you don't
No.
get to vote?
It's gotta be 4 council people.
I'm here about I want to make a statement about the Palmer Square as well. I'm over here at 44 Fuller Court, Donnegraph. Donnegraph, 44 Fuller Court in Bridgewater. So like other people, I haven't been a resident here. I've been a lifelong New Jersey resident and a Somerset County resident. I've also worked in Bernardsville for many, many years, as well as has been frequently in businesses for 35 years. I'm here because I love the town. I've looked often to move here, but haven't been able to. So the first thing I want to say is your planning board did the job you asked them to do. They voted 6-1 against designating property eligible for the dollars for the New Jersey local redevelopment and housing law. The 2 points that were brought up, the main 2 points that were brought up, just don't qualify for redevelopment. The first one, the parking lot, I agree with everyone here. It was really more about negligence on the owner's property and not maintaining it. The other one was cited as ADA. And we all know from ADA that those buildings are too old and are exempt. So taking those dollars that would benefit the developer more than anyone else from the New Jersey residents is wrong. So even as a New Jersey resident, don't take my dollars for something and move it towards them. To vote today for it requires you to have rationalization, not logic.
Yeah, Sue Rankin on Zoom. Sue, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I too would like to thank the borough for its time and also my fellow residents for chiming in. There's a lot of people I agree with in this. I think we all can agree that the property needs to be somehow redone. It is a little bit of an eyesore. But my greatest fear is that you will take on the designated blighted area, and that changes a lot of things for this and for going into the future as you look at other areas that need to be redeveloped. Because once you become declared a blighted area, you can't change that. And that opens the door for eminent domain. And I know at the, I don't know which recent meeting it was, but the council said they would not use that. But the problem is, once that door is opened, there's no guarantee on anything. And I did like the idea of Palmer Park, but I also understand the need for the property owners to make money on their property. I get that. But like I said, I strongly urge the council to not do the designated blighted area, but do work on, whether it be the owners or Advanced Realty, whoever, should work on the property and make it nicer under the auspices of the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, sir.
Hi, my name is Jeff Lefkowitz. I live at 100 Ambar Place. And I am proud to say that I've been a resident of Bernardsville for well over 30 years. And all three of my older boys have graduated from the high school, and they all just love the town. Okay. The council has gone to great lengths to accommodate Advanced Real Estate regarding the Palmer properties. That said, has the board, and I realize that you cannot respond to me, I'm not allowed to ask a question. So I'm hoping that afterwards, when we have the opportunity, that we will respond. That said, has the board asked, let me start that again. That said, has the board done any due diligence on Advanced properties? Besides what has been presented by Advanced, I ask because a quick search, which I did on my own via Google, indicated that there is a $1 million lawsuit now pending from Scotch Plains that was brought by Advanced and by a company called PSS because they got rid of Advanced and they're doing something totally different in terms of the property. And again, my point is that I love the historical values of Bernardsville, and I really would like us not to get into a situation where we're being sued by somebody who's pursuing us to rehabilitate the property. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
iPad 24 on Zoom. It's got it. What's the letter next to it? There's somebody on Zoom. It says iPad 24. Yes.
Anybody else remember?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Eric Colwell, 101 Campbell Road. I feel bad. I don't have any prepared comments. Very unnerving right now. And Anthony, if I go 3 minutes, you can come over and mute me. You know, growing up in Bernardsville, just to give you a sense of how long I've lived here, when I would come down Mount Airy Road and I'd go by that weird telephone post outside the Palmer building, I'd have to pedal backwards to stop because I didn't have handbrakes. So it was about 54 years ago. You know, I got interested in this recently. I retired and I decided to want to just kind of get back involved in the town that I've loved and grew up, you know, in. And someone asked me to attend this last session where they presented that report on why the Palmer project would qualify for redevelopment. And what makes it super awkward is I know the Palmers and I like them a lot, and I hope they're not watching and they're gonna come to my house later and beat me up or something. But, you know, ultimately, I watched that presentation by the vendor that you all hired, and I said to myself, geez, you know, as much as I think there's some quirky elements to that property, I said, you know, I get that there's these 5 stipulations that would make the Palmer property into a quote unquote target for redevelopment. I get that. So later on, when you guys are explaining or talking about your rationale, my hope is that you don't reiterate those 5 things, because I think we all understand those. I think what we all want to hear about is why, you know what, and I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I think what's a little frustrating is you've all had a fair amount of time to educate all of us on why, but you haven't. I don't know what that form could have been. There's the bubble and some other things where the answer's been just read stipulations, they're okay. But you know, the 6 people who are on that planning board who I've never met before, and frankly, after that presentation and the vote came in, I was really nervous because I'm thinking, oh, this is all pre-packed. They're going to vote for the redevelopment. And I was astonished that not one of them did, not one person, except for Chad, and I get it. Technically, they're the planning board, and I guess you're kind of an ad hoc member too.
Full-time planning board.
Okay, so then why is it 6? Is there 6 planning board members plus you, or is there 7 planning board members?
There's 9 altogether, including the mayor or designate, 1 member of the council, and 1 of the borough official.
Okay.
Plus the residents of Class 4 members. So there are 9 altogether.
Got it. So Chad, you participate in all the planning board
Yes,
meetings?
he's a
Okay,
full
good.
member.
Got it. That being said, these people, that's all they do, right? That are for, at least on that committee, and they're focused on doing exactly that. And it wasn't like 4-2 or 3-3, it was 6-0. And so I'm out. You're gonna choke me out. But just the parting comment, and that's what I'd like to hear from you all. I'm sure you're going to do that, which is just tell us why. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I can't, we got you? Top left, there you are. Are you unmuted? Yes. Go ahead. On Zoom.
Are you asking iPad 24, Madam Mayor?
You are on, so just give us your name and address. Is that you?
Or do you not have a question? Or a comment?
You have your hand up on the screen.
I'm sorry, are you reaching out to iPad 24? Yes, you are. Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. Yes, my name is John Ridley. With my wife Althea Ridley, we've lived in Somerset Hills for 50 years plus, and we've lived at our current home at 70 Campbell Road for 43 years plus. I should note that I am an attorney, albeit not a land use attorney, and don't claim to have expertise in land use. But I was intrigued upon reading the report by the topology group of they term the report preliminary investigation, but it's the only one that I found available through the borough. So I assume it's the final report. And I read that, and I focus, and I asked you folks on the council to really focus on pages 15 and 16 of that report when you are engaging in your consideration, because that is the critical portion that deals with the meaning and the definition of blight under the law that is applicable here, and the concept of, quote, faulty arrangement, close quote, which is also addressed in that report. And I then read the case law that is cited by the topology group to support
their proposed finding that there was a condition of blight. And I must say that I just cannot agree with the legal decision that they come to, that this satisfies the concept of blight as it's been enunciated by our Supreme Court. And I think that it's almost self-evident that it shouldn't, because while there are significant issues with the parking lots outside of the bagel bin and behind the Palmer buildings, I understand that. I think they are all readily curable, very easily curable, unlike the properties that have been found to be blighted under the law, where literally in the one key case that is cited, the 6264 Main Street case in Hackensack and the Union City case, the buildings were falling down. And in fact, in one instance did fall down while the proceedings were going on in court. So I suggest that while I know you have to use your independent judgment, but I think you have to look at that topology report very carefully if you are going to rely on it, and perhaps ask your counsel to give you further illumination on what the meaning of blight is under the statute, what the meaning of faulty arrangement is under the statute. After reading those cases, I drove past through the town center today, past the Palmer building, and looked at it. And I looked at the building and I said, this is inconceivable to me that you are going to find that this is a blight condition, notwithstanding the problems in the parking lot. And I think that topology, while they talk about potential for danger in the parking lot, et cetera, I'm in that parking lot many days a week. And as I'm sure you are, and frankly, we're able to get around it. It needs help, but it's not a basis for finding that there is a blight condition.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kara Valentine.
Hi, thank you so much. My name's Kara Mulcahy Valentine. I first moved to Bernardsville in 1987 with my family, my parents. Bernardsville and the culture of the town is very, very important to me. I've moved in and out of the town over the course of that time, most recently spending the last 20 years on Sterling Road. I really want you to focus on the governance here. How do you possibly override the planning board's recommendation? I also will tell you that for the past 20 years on Sterling Road, I never go down Pill Hill to Mount Airy Road to get into town because the traffic is so heavy. I always take a right on Pale Hill and go Meeker into town, even though it takes longer, not necessarily longer because of the traffic. I can't imagine building that area and having more cars on the road and more congestion just to get into town. And then lastly, Bernardsville is about community. That's why I love it. That's why I keep moving back to Bernardsville. It's such an incredible town. It's got a great culture. You walk into any store, you know everybody. The bagel bin is no different. Sari and David, they have raised our children. Literally, they've been an extension of our families. And I really want to maintain the culture of the town. And I hope that you will seriously consider all of this in your decision making. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Awesome. I just wanted to mention and something to keep in mind for everyone. Can you not hear me?
Address.
Oh, sorry, 13 Orchard Street. My name's written on Olivia Manning. Hi, thank you. Apologies. Something to keep in mind, and traffic I know because I see it right up to Orchard Street actually, which is quite far down. We do have a state highway running through the center of our town. And while that's most certainly not any kind of excuse or anything like that, it is absolutely a challenge. And as some of you may know, I am the executive director of Downtown Bernardsville, named like the place, but not actually the place. We're a separate nonprofit. Our name just happens to be Downtown Bernardsville. However, we are trying to work with the state to put up a sign, put something nice up for the community, and it's very challenging. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about traffic. Keep that in mind when you're considering all the changes that may or may not be happening in the center of town, is that we do have a state highway, and it's very difficult to work with our state officials, our Department of Transportation, and a number of other individuals involved to be able to make necessary changes so that traffic can be alleviated. I am, for one, all for making any kind of changes that would make traffic better, but we have to remember that it's not just today's decision that makes an impact. It's a number of other things that come into play as well. And a lot of these things could take a lot of time to get there. So just something to think about as everyone's really considering a lot of decisions. Or a lot of really important points raised tonight. A lot of other sides to the points that have been raised previously in other conversations, other meetings, etc. So let's remember to consider other sides. And our council and our mayor are all also volunteers as well. So let's remember that they're doing this not because they're getting anything out of it, just other than being civil servants for our community. So thank you all for being on our council and making these difficult decisions on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Yes. Come on up.
Good evening, my on camera here, I'm sitting right next over here. Full setback, 5 Charlotte Hill Drive in Burnsville. I underscored the word Bernardsville. I didn't have prepared comments for tonight. I was just kind of taking some notes and scribble along the way. And I'm a little confused, right? Some folks are saying that we weren't aware of what's going on. We want things the way they are. There was a survey that went to every household in town in the winter of 2017, 2018. That I looked it up, it's on the borough website. I'm pretty sure it's still there, Anthony. And on there, we have like 2,500 households, Tom, roughly. We had 1,102 households respond to that. And in that response, we're asking about, does our center of town need to be revitalized? Is it important, very important, or extremely important? 98% said they were in favor and said that revitalizing our downtown is important. And then now I'm hearing this here. So is this just the 2% we're hearing? Where's the other 98%? That's what I'm trying to understand. 44% of the households responded that this is an important issue to revitalize our center of town. And I know that was played back in the town hall in the high school. And I think that was around March of 18, it was played back. So I'm not, no one's arguing or debating here. I'm just saying there has been surveys, there's been discussion. There was an open town hall where a couple hundred people attended in the high school. There was even a working charrette with planners during that session. And then there was a committee that presented to the council when we had in-person meetings here, pretty much every quarter, and that kind of stopped once COVID hit. But then even these numbers were cited by topology when they presented to council recommendations in December of 2018. And it had a lot of support, and a lot of energy and support behind it about revitalizing the downtown. Now the question becomes, what is the definition of revitalizing the downtown? Right? Just fuck all. I get you. Listen, everyone here in town loves our town, right? I love this town. I moved to this town. I came to a small town here for my daughter, my family. She graduated the high school here. She's doing awesome in college now. It's all these wonderful things. But the other part I see in this town too is you got a tough job there on the council. You got to weigh a lot of different things. The planning board, to my understanding, is an input to your decision. It's not the decision, it's an input, and many factors have to come into play. And one of the things I understand too is that our town, from the 2,524 households that pay property taxes in Bernardsville, by the way, Bernardsville, these are people that have a vote here. They represent, Tom, is roughly around 90% of the revenues to support the town. It's at least 90% of the revenues here. Okay, we have a downtown that's underperforming. It's a downtown that's built from the 1940s. So it's how do we become thoughtful about having a vision, a strategy, and the guts to do what's right long-term to create the environment for sustainable success for the merchants, for the residents, and for the taxpayers, and for the town to not be overly reliant on the residents. So we've got to be thoughtful about all this. And then with an A&R, we're not talking about what's being built there. It just gives the town the control, of my understanding, to say, here's what should be built there. Because if it's not done that way, anything can go up over there. So we just got to be careful about this. I don't think anybody, myself included, wants this to be a summit of our town. We don't want that. But we want to be thoughtful about it. We want to be the town where you grow up and you raise your kids, you raise your families, and we have a center of town that we can be proud of. It's a destination for people to come to spend the day, and we address all the issues here and be thoughtful about it. So I appreciate the tough position you're in here, but I want you to stand here. I think we all want to do this and do it right. And we want to be thoughtful, but we also want to have say here, and we just can't let the villagers do whatever the heck they want. So I think there are some things here about control. Well, yeah, the control is that we have the say in terms of what goes in there, and so we can do it properly, thoughtfully, strategically, with vision, with the North Star, so we can be all successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, thank you.
Cheryl Riley, still Childs Road, Burnsville. Respectfully, I think when people put a survey out and say, would you like your town revitalized? Would you like it beautiful? Everybody's going to say yes. We want our town to be revitalized. We want more merchants to come. But right now, I can tell you the rent in a lot of places is really high. And so maybe somehow we could figure that one out to make it a little bit easier for people to put places in. When we revitalized the Kings area, I call it Kings because Kings was the biggest area there, but now where Kessler and all of that is, that was revitalized, but nobody tore it down and put a apartment complex up. They actually revitalized it down the street at, well, it's up the street, sorry, I forgot where I was, where the old Mastros used to be. That was revitalized, and look how beautiful that looks. That's what we need about revitalization. That's what we call still staying in the small town aspect of it, instead of putting up high-rise buildings and bringing in, and you know what? Maybe we do need some sort of things in this health for other people to live, some apartments or what have you, but they should go to Bernardsville residents. People who want to live here, who have children here, who can't afford to live here, maybe we find places for them instead of bringing people in from all over. I know the train is a draw for a lot of people, and I understand all that. But to be honest with you, small town is what people like. Small town is what we all came here for, and that's why we live here for so many years. Thank you.
So the order of secondary comments or else this will never move on to the next steps.
Okay, this is your comment.
Yeah. Paul, you have your second. 60 seconds. Yeah, you have your second. Let's keep to no more.
We don't want to
Yeah.
I'm Maria Nadale, Minebrook Properties, Quimby and Minebrook. And I live in Pottersville on Windsor Lane. And I've spoken to Jane. We were very involved with the survey. We believe in redevelopment. We think the town is a beautiful town. I've been shopping here and coming here for 35 years. Okay, I'm here every day in Bernardsville. Spend a lot of money in this town. I don't live here. I live up the road. Chris grew up here. Basically, I think people, when they think of redevelopment, they think of empty stores like what you're doing with the Audi dealership getting filled. The restaurant that you're going to put in the,
Could you speak up?
I'm sorry, the restaurant that's going to go in the train station, that's redevelopment. Filling empty stores, storefronts like the print shops getting filled up now, we're working on that. Fixing up anything that's broken looking and doing things that are good for the town. I'm not saying that we don't believe in redevelopment, but we think that what's going on now with, you know, fighting and everything is terrible. And we know that you need control to do the Palmer property, but even if it wasn't a redevelopment zone, if the Palmers sell, you're still going to be in control because they can't do things without your permission. We can't do something on the space in the building without your permission. So I'm just saying that maybe we should all work together and try to make things right. That's, I think.
Okay, cool, one more.
One more.
No, you want to slow.
Yeah,
It's so.
Excuse me, guys.
Excuse me, the woman over there went 3 times, so.
Yeah.
My name is Cheryl.
Yes, and by the way, just because like, with an idea, this is actually off the website. This is a survey that was done, and it wasn't just about saying revitalizing yes or 98%. Revitalization also means amenities for the town, parking, parks, walking paths. And then when we asked the public, the town, what would you want? They wanted more sit-down restaurants, more cultural and family events related to the arts and food, etc. Some higher-end bars with music, brew pubs, wine bars were cited, town-sponsored events, bike paths, signage uniformity, concerts and shows, and pocket parks. Those are all elements that were included in there, okay? They were asked there. We didn't get, I just want to let you know, it was a comprehensive study. Yes,
Not the organ.
gotcha.
Gotcha.
So all I was just pointing to is that there was a comprehensive survey to the town, and the town spoke, and 98% with strong response came forward. This is what they were seeking. So again,
It's wording.
times are even tougher today, so I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that there was input and people were not ignored. And the people of Bernardsville spoke.
I'd like to speak.
Okay, your second.
Yeah, what?
Janice, yeah. Oh, Janice.
I am Janice Virtue, 50-year resident at 17 Charlesworth Avenue. I raised 2 boys here in this town, 30 years.
Talk louder, please.
Sure, as a teacher at Bedwell School and a former Board of Education member. By virtue of the fact that you would bypass a 6-1 vote from the planning board, to me is unconscionable. That's why you have a planning board. Yes, you can ignore their decision, but should you? It seems to me you need to consider the vast majority of the people's comments here tonight. Take them seriously. And I would say, find another way to revitalize this town so that people are happy. And by the way, you see all these people here tonight, you can be sure that if these people feel this way, there are far more at home that are not here that feel this way. You really need to consider it. You need to think about what your planning board recommended. Thank you.
Anybody else that hasn't had a first talk that wants to talk? No, I have Barbara back there.
Oh, sorry, Barbara, you go.
Barbara Pitney, Lloyd Road, Bernardsville. And I just have one comparison, and it was easier and less of an issue in the long run. Quite a few years ago, the school board decided that we were a town that had culture, like Paris, London, New York. And they decided that they would put the baccalaureate program in. 90% of us said, it's not gonna fly because we're not cultured. We didn't have the museums. We didn't have anything to make it effective. They fired half of the teachers because they had to hire baccalaureate trained teachers. We lost some of our best teachers as a result. Well, how many years down the drain, down to there, all of a sudden, it's recognized we can't perform the baccalaureate. College entrance examiners looked at it and said, that's not a baccalaureate program. And it worries me here because I've seen other mistakes in the town, having lived here probably the longest, over 50 years. That, you know, you're not going to look, this isn't reversible like the baccalaureate was. And it worries me that you're going to do something that we can't reverse later.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tara was next. I'm sorry. My apologies.
I'll be really quick. I'm Tara Vitola, I live at 120 Claremont Road, and I have a business in Vernonville, Old Pot Square, 13 Minebrook Road. I am one of those people who filled out the survey very eagerly back in 2015, 2016, actually wanting redevelopment or revitalization to call it. And I'm here to retract that. When I first moved here, I came from the city area. I only had one son. And of course, I was younger, I'll be 40 this year, and walking around and seeing that maybe there weren't any bars or pubs or wines, anything with liquor license, kind of was unsettling. Now we're gonna flash forward. Now we went through COVID, so didn't come to a council meeting, had 2 more children, and now I open boutique downtown. My business is thriving, by the way. It's not underperforming. It's doing great. To also just to say that I'm not against redevelopment or revitalization, but I am against all these condos. I don't want them. I don't think a lot of us want them. And I think a lot of us would probably retract that survey if given a chance. I do think that there are some empty storefronts, but I think that's the town's job to maybe either cite the landlords or possibly ask them to lower the rents. I know other towns do that. Also in regards to the Palmers, if they don't get this redevelopment, are we going to backcite them for the negligence on their property? Because quite frankly, they are here and they really could have done something about it. I know my parking lot's terrible. I've contacted the HOA for that, and hopefully that gets done. But that's what I have to say, and I hope that you guys really go against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, first, sorry.
Hi, my name is Chris Harold. I live at One Windsor Lane in the Potterville section of Bedminster with Maria, who spoke earlier. I own Minebrook Properties, which is Lot 2, Block 70 in the Quimby redevelopment zone. It consists of about 0.65 acres, includes Plaza Decal restaurants, Suki restaurant, former Budget Print Center, which is now going to be Kara Elise Collection Wedding dress. We have another tenant going into number 19 Brook, and we also own 17 Brook, which is craft hair salon. So 0.6 of an acre in that zone. Regarding that survey that was put forth, that survey was done all wrong. Of course, everybody wants redevelopment. The survey was worded wrong. If the survey had said, do you want redevelopment with the possibility of condemnation that would tear down all the buildings? and condemnation also allows them to break all the leases, kick all the businesses out. And so it's going to change the town completely. All along, the town council has said it's a non-condemnation zone. There's an ordinance that says non-condemnation. And, you know, I said, great, you know, I don't have to worry. You guys probably all didn't have to worry. Non-condemnation, they're not going to change the town. However, in June of this year, I had a meeting with some of the members here. They again said non-condemnation. After that, I discovered there was a developers agreement signed January 20th of this year with Advanced AR Quimby LLC, which is Advanced Realty, basically Peter Cosiello. And I found it, but I couldn't find it on the website. It wasn't on the website. So finally we found it. I had a meeting and I discovered that they had signed it January 20th of this year, kept it off the website. Specifically says in there that the town can do condemnation if they so desire. They can change everything. So condemnation can happen. Peter Cosiello went after me, call after call. I ignored it. Finally, I did have a meeting with him. It wasn't 5 minutes into it. He said, we could do a friendly condemnation. But he made it very clear that if I didn't do a friendly condemnation, it would be a real condemnation. So they want control because they want to be able to condemn everybody. That's why we should not have these redevelopment zones in this town. Exactly.
Clarify that we just changed over our website January 1st, so some things didn't get there that was. For respect, please, if you can't be respectful,
you must get it down there.
I have an email from you saying that it was that about condemnation and
Just be clear on that. I wrote that agreement. It's not
does not say the town can just without proper
Right.
going through. So understand the rule of condemnation.
And I can say that there's no one on this council that would vote for this.
Just understand that condemnation.
Yeah, the council changed it.
So hold on, just so there's no confusion, because I know everyone gets caught up in work. The municipality, any municipality has the right to start a condemnation, whether it's in an agreement or not. There is a process. This council started a process on Quimby where it said non-condemnation. They put a flag in the ground and said that area needed redevelopment will not have the power of condemnation. It passed an ordinance. All that agreement says is the developer at a certain time can come back and ask. The council did not give any or waive any. If they wanted to do it, it would have to go back all the way to the beginning and start over again. So it would never be done in the dark of the night. It would be a room like this. And this council has on record, every time asked, would you ever say yes to that? Has said no. So just to be clear.
Yeah, now.
Again, Eddie Zervigon, Mendham. Again, this is exactly why there's no trust in this process and the transparency. Again, I implore you, I would like to see from all of you, each of you, signed affidavits under oath that you do not know anything in terms of developers' plans that you have not shared with everybody. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to have the transparency. You're not going to have the trust of the people. We give you the power to decide for. I'm not a Bernardsville resident. I'm right next door, but I shop here. I'm here every single day. And as my wife said, my kids are here. You know, we've been longstanding 20-year members of the community. So you're not going to get you're not going to get the trust from the people if you cannot give us that transparency. And that story, I hadn't even heard that. That to me, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I hear that and I'm thinking to myself, that is not good. So again, I would like to see, this is the question. I would like you folks to provide sworn affidavits that you know nothing of a plan. You haven't met with Advanced Realty. You haven't seen designs. You haven't discussed. You know it's good because that's the only way that you can be going against your planning committee because you know something they've done. Either that or you think they're idiots. I don't know. You tell me which one. Thank you.
Great, okay, one more.
So, Marie Dale. I don't think that the intention was bad, but I think that agreement from January 20th, that's Peter Cocosiello Advanced Realty's agreement. That's what he wanted. It's his developer's agreement. And in there, he says if after 2 years he can't purchase, he can, whatever the verbiage was, I'm not quite sure, but then it says, or eminent domain. And even if you all said, no, you can't do condemnation, you can't do eminent domain, I believe that he would sue the town to be able to do eminent domain because he has a lot of lawsuits. And that's why everybody is concerned. So that's my concern.
The developer does not have the right to do eminent domain. It has to be done by council action. He could sue all he wanted to, and the town does not have to do eminent domain. I understand your position, but that's just the process.
But wouldn't that cost the town a lot of money?
Yeah.
To fight?
Absolutely. He would never file a suit where he knows the rule.
Who is it? Darwin? Darwin, are you on there? On Zoom, Darwin? You see him? He's still muted.
Yes, hi, we're here.
Okay, go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, hi, how are you? I just wanted to just make some comments regarding when my husband and I moved here. We moved here in 2008. We had been in Jersey City prior, so like most of the residents that have raised their hands, we came from, you know, a different environment, urban environment. We lived in Jersey City for almost 20 years.
And we came out to Bernardsville because we wanted a small town community. We wanted a smaller school. We wanted to be in a place where our people know us, our teachers know us, a place where we feel like our kids can be successful. When you talk about using the property where the bagel bin is, where we came from in Jersey City, they had a waterfront, kind of like the waterfront development, where there was a radon cleanup that had to be done because the land had been toxic from radon. So the city was very transparent about it. They spent 2 years cleaning it up, and then they developed it. So this past gentleman who was talking about transparency, that's definitely something that we want to understand. But I don't understand the idea of putting housing units in such a busy area. We moved from Jersey City to get away from that. And I'm not really understanding the logic to having, potentially families living there and children, playing near the street, that kind of thing. So I just want to go with my neighbors and say, basically that we want to keep this small town feel. And I'm not understanding why we would want to build it up with condominiums and change that feel.
Can you just give us your name and address?
Oh, sure. My name is Christy Modine, and my address is 26 Stone Fence Road, Bernardsville.
Anyone else? First time? Okay. Oh, there's another one. Who is it? Peachy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Peachy, and I'm on Chilton Street in Bernardsville. And I've been listening to everybody, and oh, what a thing. What a thing. So I've been here for 55 years too. And boy, do I hate to admit that, but I have been. I'm a good old townie. And I filled out that survey. And one of the things I said in the survey was, what about a weed whack day? Everybody goes downtown with their weed whacker and just weed whacks the sidewalks. And, and I also painted the mural on the bridge, and I marched in the Christmas parade. And so it's so nice to hear how everybody loves Bernardsville. And what a thing for all these different councils, because tonight I might want to say, yeah, I want that planning board decision to go forward. And by the way, I adore Peter Palmer, who was not just a civic servant, but he served the high school for many, many years as part of the band front. So I have deep affection for him and Kathleen. And I'm thinking somebody talked about signage in that survey. Well, what a great place to start. Simple, easy, get the signage under control and go from there. My concern, I think, is I heard a lot of people from Ambar Place, Bernards Avenue, and I grew up, by the way, on Center Street. So I'm familiar with that part of town too. And now I live on Chilton Street. So, I love both sides. And my concern, I think, with Advanced Realty is just that, is this a gateway to a whole bunch of other stuff, not just on the Amerlin parking lot and Bernards Avenue and whatnot. And I see the need for, how those properties can change. I see that. But then also townhomes, across from the wastewater plant, and then townhomes at the foot of Woodland, and then townhomes all along Claremont. And that's kind of islandizing the four neighborhoods in that area as well. So both sides of towns are experiencing the same problems or concerns. They're not problems, concerns. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the time.
Anyone else? Is there another one? Oh, somebody's coming in. Wait a minute. Hang on. We got a lot. Oh, we got a lot of them. Right.
Greg Chicano, 46 Somerset Avenue. Admittedly, I'm not up to speed on everything that's going on, but my basic feelings are very simple. I moved here because I love this small town. That's the charm of this borough. One of my wishes that I'll never get is that I was born in this town and raised in this town and lived here all my life. That didn't happen. But the next best thing happened. I moved here 37 years ago, whatever it is. I love this town. I didn't move to Morristown because that's not what I wanted. I didn't move to Summit because that's not what I wanted. I didn't move to Somerville because I didn't want that. This is what I wanted. I have hundreds of pictures home in my office that depict what Bernardsville was, what it is today. And we're losing that. And as Barbara said very eloquently, you can't go back on this. The IB program we went back on, I was on the Board of Education, and I fought that battle single-handedly, and we changed it because it didn't make any sense. And we went back to the AP program that we should have kept all along. There's no going back to this. I want us to think through this. And for the people who want that, there are towns and there's houses listed in those towns for sale. And I just wish we would keep the charm that this place has, and hopefully we'll continue to have it. I'm fearful that we're going to lose that. And I hope this council makes the right decision to keep what we have and modify it. And yes, I get what this gentleman was saying. Survey is a survey, but there's a lot in that survey that, you know, that people didn't buy into what's going on now, that filled out that survey and wanted revitalization. So please think this through. Thank you.
So I think we're done. We're done. I will close the public hearing, the open public session. I don't know if Mr. DeMarco, I don't know if you, some people posed some questions. I don't know if you can clarify some of the issues about like the school funding and those kinds of things that are kind of legal issues. Where the session is closed. We're done. No, this is to answer the questions that were asked during the public session.
There were some questions, just.
Oh, yeah, so that, yeah, your question is one of the ones I wanted him to answer about. Remember what it is?
I remember some of them. I'm sure somebody will remind me of the ones the biggest question is, what are we actually doing, right? That's always what everyone asks, and depending on when you joined this trail that we started. So all that happens tonight, if they vote yes, is that gets declared an area needing redevelopment. That's it, period. If they want to change and write a redevelopment plan on it, the council sent it to the planning board to do what they did with Quimby, which took about 2 years. Where people met and talked and sat up here and groups were formed to decide what that plan should look like. Plan came here, it gets amended, it goes back, council then votes on it. So the only issue tonight is that an area in need of redevelopment? Period. No pilot, no zoning, no tall building committee, nothing. It is the first step in that process. So if you don't do it, there is zoning already in place. What does the current zoning allow? That would be a question I would ask. Full disclosure, live in town 26 years. You put 70 residential units there as of right. No one in this room would have a set. They would go right to the zoning, the planning board, file their application,
put it in, only people who get notice or live within 200 feet. Most of the people who live within 200 feet is a railroad track and some businesses. And you'd wake up one morning and there'd be construction. That's what they're allowed to do. Same as I could take my house down tomorrow and put in whatever the current zone. If I wanted to put a bigger house than what the zoning allows, I need variances, I need permission. Redevelopment just gives this board a little bit more oversight over what can go there. That's the process. You may not like it. I have my own opinions. I keep them to myself on this matter. But that's what happens if they vote yes or if they vote no. You should just be aware of that. There's already underlying zoning that once again allows 70 residential units to get built there with no say, other than they just have to comply with the zoning. We may not like that, we may not want it, but that's what happens. Eminent domain, I think I addressed. This project also has no eminent domain attached to it. It doesn't. Blighted areas, non-blighted areas, 2 professionals, 2 planners, town planner John Zabo, professional planner hired by the planning board, both said it meets the criteria. That is their job. That's what they do for a living. This board has the right to either amend, modify, or accept those findings. Relatively simple in its form. Lawsuits against Advance, yes. Yes, they've been sued. As it probably almost any developer. Scotch Plains one is interesting. The one gentleman that mentioned that one. Surprised you didn't mention Bridgewater. But the Scotch Plains one is a fight by PSNS because, and someone may appreciate this, they wrote plans. The city then kept those plans and wanted to give them to another developer. PSNS said, sorry, they're all plans. If you're going to use them, you got to pay. Advance also had challenges with Bridgewater. New mayor came in. They have resolved that case. They used the court system to resolve it in terms of there will still be a development. There will still be a center of excellence. It will look different, but it will still have pretty much all of its components.
Pilot program and then.
So a pilot did not come automatically. You are correct. I forget who did their research. With the pilot, you are correct that in order to qualify for a pilot, you must be in an area you need to redevelop. Doesn't mean you get the pilot. There is no money that goes to the developer. There is no magic, no check, nothing that gets sent to the redeveloper if this area gets declared an area you need to redevelop.
And Joe, that has to be approved by us. Any financial agreement.
Correct. A financial agreement has to run its course. It has to meet certain standards. It has to have a public hearing. It has to be passed by ordinance. There are pros and cons for that. I've done enough of them, both sides of them. And if anyone's interested, I'll buy you a cup of coffee about it. But we're not there yet, and we may never get there. That's.
And Joe, can you explain how the school, how the.
You want to talk about pilot? All right. Yeah. So, all right. So a pilot is a payment in lieu of tax. I call it a pilot. Some people call it a tax abatement. Does not mean that the property does not pay taxes. They pay it differently. They pay it differently, and they pay it to different people. That's what it means, right? The first point you got to get that everyone else understands. They still pay taxes.
To the municipality.
They still write a check. How that check? Yes. Correct. Nope, 95%. 5% goes to the county. That's what the statute says, right? So that's how that's designed. And it's tied to a percentage, usually for residential units, it's tied to a percentage of gross income. The more rent, more money, and it's on the gross, so it's not on the net, so they don't have to play any games. The municipality gets a percentage of that. That money comes here. Does that hurt the schools? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. Schools set a budget. School says every year, similar to the county, the school sets a budget and says, we need $40 million. They hand that budget to Tom and the tax collector, and they say, collect the 40 million. They collect 40 million. If the school sets a budget next year for 42 million, they collect 42 million. They set it for 70 million, they collect 70 million. Whether or not that builder that pays the pilot contributes or not. Now, did that cost me more in my house on 59 Old Colony Road? Maybe, but did I pay less in municipal because somebody else is contributing more to the municipal? You can't just do it in a vacuum. It's not a half a story. So pilots are good tools. They're not necessary all the time, depending on your tax base, depending on your tax rates. They're mostly used in urban centers because that's how you get investment into your town. But that's the purpose.
And any pilot would have to come here before we even discuss.
Correct, it's by ordinance.
At a later date.
And before you even got to it, Jack would look at it, Tom would look at it, your CFO would look at it. The tires get kicked fairly well on that.
I would like to know how it affects me as a taxpayer. I already pay 80%, all my tax money goes to the school.
It's not 80%, but it's close.
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. You know, I may have to leave this town if I can't pay the tax.
Right.
I don't think that's,
So these buildings are also, just so you understand, buildings like this traditionally are designed for rentals, right? So they're designed to be 800 square foot, one bedrooms, right? Think of your Embassy Suites hotel room, right? I mean, that's what it is. They're not designed for. No, I'm just saying as of, this is what gets built, right? So if you look at Somerville. So if you look at Somerville and other towns that build these type of products now, the net effect on schools, and there's studies on it and demographics on it, is negligible. You get more children from 4 2-family homes
and my
than
tax
you
is
will
not gonna
from,
go up.
in most cases, taxes go down.
You can't tell me that.
I can, and I can show you the numbers, but but now we had a whole other discussion that we're not even there yet, but it's good, because it's a discussion. It really is. But that's where we're at tonight. Any questions on an area in need of redevelopment?
Our property, you mentioned that zone for 70 multifamily units.
Do you have a current zone in the downtown core?
So is that new or is that been done that way?
That's, I've been there for a couple years now.
So just to be specific, so I sit in the planning board, so it's 70 units with setbacks of 5 feet on the front of the property and on the side of the property.
Right.
So if you think of,
A couple of years ago,
why
hasn't it been since Connor's own building?
I'm sorry.
So the zoning, the planning board, all right, planning board did a whole analysis and spent about a year and a half coming up with a new zoning ordinance for the 202 corridor, right? So from the Monterey Gourmet, pretty much up to the Rose Bowl, right? That section a little bit back on North Findlay and Mount Airy. And that's divided into 3 cores, and each one has their own particular zone. Similar to if you live on the mountain, you got 5 acre zoning. If you live where I do, it's zoned differently. Lot sizes are different, right? 1 family home.
But that was done recently.
It's been done over the past couple of years. Yeah.
But see, here's that's.
This is, we're not having an open.
No, a developer can't just go in and change the zoning. That's
No, what you're doing, and you do it now. So why aren't they? They're not doing it because it's not economic. They're asking Brown to do is to do something to make it economic. So.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily true.
Okay, I'll move on.
Right? And that might be true on their side of the equation, right? You might absolutely be correct, right? I don't know their finances, so I can't tell you if it's absolutely true. Well, what I will tell you is that if you do an area you need a redevelopment and you get a redevelopment plan, you get to come back and talk about what you don't like about that zone that already exists there. Right? You get to
squeeze it in place. This group, right? This is the process. This is how this works.
So that's gonna attract the developer when they can already do what they want to do, but they don't want. to.
No, but
You're
you're
not telling them that we can
but-
do it, doesn't make sense.
No, it does make sense because
We did tonight.
I know, and I'm gonna talk to you like you do, sir. I'm not trying to dumb it down. You made a point that there's a financial incentive to the development, right? I don't know what the number is or how big that financial incentive is, right? Because they want that pie, right? So if that's their end game, the redevelopment plan allows you to control the size, the scope, the unit count, the unit mixes, right? So you can design a building to limit the number of kids and things of that nature.
And the aesthetic.
If those both disappear, right, there's no financial incentive and there's no control, some other developer can come in and just build, right? There is 106 Mine, right, which is right next to the firehouse, 2 buildings next to the firehouse, right? Plans in 20 units, 20 units. Planning board, approved. 20 residential units, 3 stories, done. No one said anything. No one had to say anything. No one did it. I know, but that's my point. See, so this process is good because you all know about it. Going through this door forces these conversations. The quiet zoning, you come home one night and your neighbor tear down his house and put up a purple thing. You go, what's that, right? You know, they're trying to put a fence ordinance in because we don't have any, because you come home and there's a fence and you go, where'd that come from, right? So to your point is, there is a give and take on that, right? If there's a financial incentive and you do a redevelopment plan, there is a conversation. Absent that, somebody will make it work.
Can I just ask you one question?
Sure.
Do you think the deal gets better for the developer under an area needed for redevelopment or distance?
I think it becomes more financeable if they get a pie.
If they get a pie.
If they get a pie.
Well, and also if they can, instead of 72 houses, they can, dwellings, they can do 104.
So now let me, Joe, let me make a point. So when I first found out that Advanced Realty had purchased the rights to build common, I said on the planning board, I know what the setbacks are, I know what they can build in. Century 21, the corner of Morristown, that's what they can do right now. This happened literally within the last 4 months. It seemed like a year. When did they finally purchase this? The first thing I did is I called Tom C. and said, Tom, I found it, Advanced did this. I think we need to look at this. Because what I don't want is the same thing that everyone in the room does. I don't want Century 21 on that block. I don't want a traffic nightmare on that block. I want to have things that the town can ultimately have some say in. So you mentioned about the why. We're going to talk about the whys in a second. My whys were very much Bernardsville whys. My other why is the uses in our zoning allows things like banks, allows things like 100% apartment units. There are things that can be put there that in a global zoning aren't acceptable to me. So I go back to change the zoning. Yeah. You don't have, it took us 2 years to change the zoning laws. The first.
So zoning on a large scale is an imperfect law, right? Because it becomes, you can't spot zone, you can't say the Palmer corner, you can't say.
I understand.
Right, so.
Already in our town. Right. So you can't, so 3-story buildings are already permitted in our town in this, and the setbacks are already established in our zone. Those things govern, right? The tool that we have is to provide additional layer of governance. People have used control in a bad way. I control that we're looking at, I would like, and I'm only speaking for me, because I know is oversight. I want to control the uses. I want to make sure that local businesses come first and it's not a Century 21 or a Target. Right? There are ways that we can do those things within the redevelopment approach. And that's the only tool we have.
But then every developer that's going to want to do a deal is going to have to come to you and get what they want. And they're going to get it because they know that's the only way that the deal becomes financeable for them. I mean, it's not rocket science.
I will tell you though, the 20-unit building did not ask for a pilot. I didn't get a request. Jack didn't get a request, right? So the one on 106, Minor,
there's been no request for a pilot, so they don't always.
But they're following the zoning about, they're doing.
No, but my point is, like, when you look at what's there, right, 3-story building, right?
Right. So what are we doing?
We're
We're doing it
we're not having a discussion. here.
So-
I just asked Joe to address the issue.
I went a little too far. Apologize.
Yeah, but
Thank you.
our administrator wanted to also say something. Thank you, Joe.
So I wasn't the planner on this project, but I am a planner and a municipal administrator. I'm very interested in planning from the business end of running the town. So I understand the finances of the town, of any town. This is my 6th community. And I tend to be attracted to towns that have this sort of redevelopment issues going on. So the one word that I wanted to address was that concept of control that came up over and over again. Council wants control. One of our council members asked me, what could potentially be built there on that size lot under our current zoning? Because the question last time was, why don't you just let the zoning ride? So I gave her examples. Gina recently was asking me. So I showed her a McDonald's, I showed her a Target, I showed her a Walmart. All things that technically could go there under our current zone. So we could let it ride. It could happen. Okay, so the way zoning works, by the way, is you have a master plan and it has to be reviewed every few years. And after you have a master plan, you're allowed to do a zoning plan. The reason you do redevelopment, in theory, is whatever you came up with for your zoning plan, the vision that you had, the market's not responding to it. So it allows you to create an incentive. So that's sort of what we mean by control as well. Instead of just letting any business come in there, it's an important area of town. And so we want to control it architecturally. Under regular zoning, you can't specify the cladding. You can't specify the roofing material. You can ask for extra things like maybe a clock tower. You can ask, but you can't require it. You can ask for a small public plaza for people to sit in and, with cobblestones and decorative and enhanced features. You can ask for that under zoning, but you can't require it. So given all the effort that went into the planning that Paul talked about, council felt, well, we need to control it more than the zoning allows. So that's what we mean by control, just so you know. I have maybe a little bit more an idealistic view of what pilots are for. For me, a pilot is we can't mandate to a developer who's doing the project, hey, listen, why don't you install 3 electrified mid-block crosswalks? Or why don't you if you can't put all the parking that's required here, why don't you buy a little lot down the street and do something with that? Instead of making it like vinyl siding, why don't you do hardy plank or hardwood stuff that can get painted over time and look good? I've used pilots to make sure apartments, when apartments are being built, are of the highest quality, because my biggest fear is apartments that deteriorate. And I think some of our parents left those areas to come to the suburbs to get away from some of that. So I'm very sensitive to high quality apartments. I want storage areas for people to put their bikes and their kayaks and their holiday decorations. I want tall ceilings. I want nice molding. I want fireplace inserts. There's a lot of things that I would like. I would like enhanced noise attenuation if you're on a busy street, so when you're inside, it's nice and quiet. Those things cost money, right? It's hard enough to get those things built on a wooded lot. But now, if you're a developer, you have to dig up what's there, you have to tear down what's there, you have to potentially deal with some environmental issues, you might have to buy easements. Redevelopment is harder than development. So for my money as a CEO of a town or an administrator of a town, I want the best value. So I don't want all that money going just to get it ready to build and then get an inferior product that's going to deteriorate over the years. But right now we have nothing to respond to. It's not an area we need redevelopment. We can't be saying we want these things. We don't even know what we're asking for specifically because we don't have anything to react to at the moment. But the process is that you say, okay, this is important, we're putting it in redevelopment. Then we wanted to look at what you're coming up with and start negotiating. And I know this council, and it kind of hurts me a little bit because when I was hired, all they talked about was this community visioning effort and all the people that got involved and how excited they were to do something to address the storefronts. So they were really excited about that, and they're not looking to control anything. They're not looking to do anything in the middle of the night that's not for your best interest. So I'm confident that, you know, if it's an area in need of redevelopment, we can just then tell the developer, show us what you have, bring it here in front of all of you, let all of you react to it. And we'll be listening to what you're saying. And me as the business guy, I'll be calculating what these costs might be, you know, and how something might get structured. And Joe and I will work on that. So that's why we're doing this. All right. It's because the plan was adopted, was put in place, and we're just trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle to work. I'm sorry, I went over and above what you
You're 3 minutes.
asked me to. Just felt I needed to.
No, thank you. I think that helped clarify a lot of what the questions were. You want to say?
No, I did. I would like to, I think you should change the agenda tonight, if that's acceptable, under disclosure laws, if we can change the agenda. Because this is, I think we should move this conversation and just let this conversation, right?
Let's, if any of you have agendas on page 4. We have a resolution that is 22-185. It says regarding the area needed redevelopment for block 125, lots 1, 2, and 3, which is the Parliament property. What we've done is I have asked Mr. DeMarco to prepare 2 resolutions, one that names it an area needed redevelopment and one that supports the planning board's decision. So we have 2 different resolutions that we're going and the council is going to deliberate on. So this was not, we have not made a decision at this point. This is the time when we will discuss and then vote on it. So we have both resolutions prepared. So I need a motion for somebody to move one of them, and then we can start the discussion.
It doesn't matter. Why don't we just start discussion first, and we're
Okay. Go ahead.
Does anybody want to go first?
Well, I have 2 questions. Excuse my voice, I lost my voice. It's maybe best for Tom or Joe. Somebody made a comment. First of all, you answered a bunch of the questions that I had. Thank you for all the great comments. Someone said that once the development design is in place, I'm sorry, the designation is in place, it can't be changed. Can we get clarity on that? Someone said that once this designation is in place, that we cannot change it. Can we just get clarity on that point?
Can you remove the designation one? Put it in.
2 people said you can't go back on this decision.
You can, right? But you also don't have to go forward. You can just declare something area needed redevelopment
And do
and never do nothing.
To do nothing.
Correct. Never take the next step, never do the redevelopment plan.
Never discuss file.
Yeah, period. End of sentence, close the book, story over. Because to someone else's point, they may come and just redevelop it and.
So what you're saying is full optionality.
Yeah, this is just a basic, introduction. It doesn't change anything other than, depending on how you vote, it gets sent to the state and still they're on notice that we have a redevelopment area. That's it.
Thank you. I have one other quick question. Sorry. A couple of speakers spoke about lawsuits and lawsuits being maybe higher propensity of lawsuits with redevelopment agreements. If you don't have any background on that, I understand it's kind of on the moment, but I just would welcome any more further clarity.
So any action by council is always subject to review. And then there's a standard of, did you apply it arbitrary and capricious, or what you jack ultra vires, right? In terms of you weren't allowed to do an act, or did you just do it without any grass space? Redevelopment law is no different than anything else a municipality does in terms of there are certain towns where lawsuits do happen, neighbors do file. There is no crystal ball that would really say one, attracts more than another. It's just the nature of ordinances and actions taken by courts.
Google it, there are tons of them. There are tons of them, and most of them are about severe.
This is not running on public, I know, okay. It's our time now, go guys. Hey, do you want to comment?
They're my question.
Okay, so I prepared, a statement that I wanted to make to Gina McCready. And I think the first thing I want to say is something that Joe had said earlier. I urge you all to go to the planning board meetings. I'd love for you to come to the council meetings too, but I urge you all to go to the planning board meetings because there are plenty of developments that are going in front of them in town against current zoning. And I really urge you, if you don't want development in this town, that you need to go to the planning board meetings, because there are things that are happening that you have no idea about. I really would urge you to do that. So separate from my comments. So there are 4 things that I want to see in the Palmer area. 1, which is what a lot of you made comments on tonight, is greatly enhanced and improved traffic and cycle patterns. The traffic is atrocious in the middle of town, and all of this other development isn't going to help. And development on Palmer, whether this is near or not, is also not going to help. So that's one of the main things for me, and it will require work with the state and the county, as Olivia stated on the call too, along with the developer, whoever that might be. And essentially what that means for me is that that Palmer building on the corner needs to be moved back. There's no other way to increase that traffic flow without that happening. And there's nothing that can be done about it unless this is made an area of redevelopment. The second is the parking availability that we can urge and put parameters against. The use itself, as we've stated earlier as well about the number of residential units and everything, we can change the use of that space, and also the setbacks. So for me, the case for designation is not about the blight or the lack of maintenance. The case is about the traffic patterns for me. I want that Palmer building moved away from the center of town. And that, for me, it falls under faulty arrangement, and it falls under the smart goal growth, which is also part H. So when I read through all of the criterion, I'm making my own determination on what parts of the law this falls under. So many people have expressed their concerns over the traffic at that intersection. It's our opportunity to enforce this. I want to, let me just skip a little bit. I do again want to just state that the county, the state, the borough, the developers, everybody has to cooperate in order to make this happen. It's not on any one group or unit. The planning board is made up of a group of volunteers, as is our council and our mayor. We all were voted or appointed to our current positions. I greatly respect each and every one for their service, my fellow council members, all of the planning board members, Chad Rose, and and for their service to our community. Unfortunately, none of us do this for a living. We're not planners. So none of us, not anybody on the planning board, none of us here on council. So we've got Tom as our board administrator who is a certified planner. We've hired a company who's a certified planner, and we have John Zabo on the planning board who's a certified planner. All of them agree that there are stipulations in the current law that make this an area of redevelopment. So the fact that, the planning board voted 6-1 for this to not be an area of redevelopment, to me, I'm looking at our professionals, and I'm unfortunately not looking at our volunteers necessarily. And my own looking at the law, kind of more like the, being a judge, just looking and interpreting the facts as I see them. So looking for advice from the paid professionals. Our laws, they set a low bar. Yeah, they do. But given the information that I have in front of me and from the traffic alone, I want to make sure that that intersection is fixed. And I want to also reiterate, again, we've done it many times, but this designation only allows the Borough Council to work on a contractual agreement. In my mind, and I'm only one council member, and you're all up for re-election in November, feel free to not vote for me or vote for me, either way. But I can change as a council person as long as all of us, 2 seats are up every single year. So get out and vote. But for me, I will not approve a contractual agreement from a redevelopment perspective if those 4 stipulations are not met. And this is recorded, and you can go back, listen to it, replay it, put little videos together of me saying this, do whatever you'd like. I will not vote for any contractual agreement with any redeveloper that does not include those 4 stipulations. So no development then will be able to happen. Now, I can't do this alone. My single vote doesn't mean a thing. It has to be a majority on the council. So it has to at least to be 4-2. Again, mayor doesn't have any say in this if it's a tie. So council can only do anything with a majority. Thank you. Thank you, Jean. Oh, for the record, I have not seen any concept plans of Palmer property, nor have I talked to Advanced or Peter Proposiello or anyone from Advanced about the topic.
Want to go ahead?
Yeah. So I echo what Gina said from the standpoint of we're all volunteers here. I've looked at this for quite a bit of time. I've attended the planning board meetings, read through the presentations. And I also agree, I think the bar is very low for designating an area in need of redevelopment. As I looked at that, I decided that I felt planning board, looked at the fact that the bar was low and this did not exceed it. So I do respect the professional, but in this case, I feel that especially being a new person in town and a new person on council, that it's important that I listen to the opinions of the planning board, and so that's one factor in my vote. The second piece is I have just a philosophical belief that that government should not be involved in. We should try to reduce our involvement as much as possible in items such as this. But I will say this is a very gray issue. I completely respect my colleagues up here some of who will likely vote different than I will on this, because I don't think this is cut and dry. I think there are some benefits to redevelopment, but personally, I feel that we just haven't gotten that far, and we didn't pass the bar, so I will not be supporting.
I'm happy to ask.
Okay.
So first I want to say tonight, it's been great to have this non-community meeting. You don't know my hoarse voice, but this has been my favorite meeting we've ever had. I've been asking people to come to meetings forever. So thank you all. I mean, to have so many people turn up this meeting tonight is very exciting. And I really want to thank the public for their interest and for taking the time to provide input in this important issue. Leading up to this vote, I sought to keenly understand the perspective of the public, the planning board, our businesses, and other stakeholders in our community. I watched and I rewatched planning board meeting on this topic and read New Jersey's development law quite a few times. I researched cases of comparable communities who named areas redevelopment, those that decided not to. I spoke to many residents. I read every comment on the bubble. I spoke to too many lawyers, many community stakeholders, and I'm proud to say I met and I reached out to every single business in the current Palmer property, so I could sit down with them, listen to them, and understand their perspective. And I thank the ones that met with me for their time. This is a very important issue for our community, which should be evidenced by the amount of interest this property and others discussed in our downtown environment. That was clear to me when I campaigned for this office last year. I knocked on over 1,000 doors in Vernonville, and I spoke to thousands of residents. And the single top issue, I would say raised by over 75% of people, was taking steps to revitalize our downtown. The reason I know everyone in this council has taken their time with the decision is that we not only want to get it right for our community, but in a way that tries to bring all those invested in the future of Bernardsville along. After listening to and considering all the valuable input, two things became clear to me. First, the case for this property as laid out was not particularly strong. Yes, there are safety needs, especially around ADA accessibility, neglect, and inefficient designs of the property, such as the traffic problems that Councilwoman McCready mentioned, caused by the design of the entrances and exits, but it doesn't really convey in your mind blight in the way that you might think of blight in some other areas. Second, however, is that the standards to meet an area of redevelopment design designation are extremely low. The law doesn't stipulate the severity of degradation needed to meet it. I would even think, honestly, that the bar was purposely set that low by our state officials. As you read the statute, it's not hard to see many properties meeting one of their criteria, and it only must meet one. Therefore, in my mind, it's really a judgment call, and we have to use our best judgment to do so. I can understand why many more dedicated planning board members struggle with this decision. However, after reviewing all the pertinent factors and whether it meets the criteria, in my personal best judgment, it does. Reading through the statute, in my estimation, there's certainly enough there to meet the threshold of an area redevelopment, including the criteria for properties which could help fulfill our smart growth plans. And this, given the especially given the centralness of this location for our borough. Turning to the upcoming vote for a moment, I want to talk about the impact on our community such a destination could have. We have a wonderful downtown. I think we all agree that what is needed is a revitalization, not a complete reconstruction. That said, there are too many empty storefronts, and the feel of downtown is disjointed and uncoordinated. And importantly, commercial, and this was brought up tonight, but I asked about the statistic to our town borough as well. Commercial property owners in our town pay less than 7% of all tax revenue, meaning almost all the borough's revenue, over 93%, rest in the back of our residents. These factors need to change so we have a vibrant downtown that will continue to attract future generations of residents and businesses. I do understand the perspective and the anxiety of those against this resolution. I honestly believe that these concerns are heartfelt and valid. I earnestly believe that these concerns, though, are best addressed by this designation. Let me explain why. I believe that if you want to ensure the borough does not overdevelop, you want to preserve our historic small town feel and be sure that we don't become a Morristown or Hoboken, then you should want to name this an area of redevelopment so we can control growth, slow down the pace, and pump the brakes on development when necessary. If you want to address the traffic flow at Alcott intersection, you should want to name this an area of redevelopment, I believe, as it gives us the best opportunity to make adjustments to the traffic pattern and congestion. If you want to consider the input of our small business in the area, and I earnestly do, and possibly put in safeguards for them, you should want to name this an area of redevelopment, as the borough can work with the developer and even demand those considerations. Otherwise, it's been stated, this is nothing more than private property, and the person can do with it whatever they want to do with it within zoning laws, without the input of the affected businesses or community. And I have every reason to believe, just based on history and how I've seen this when I did my research, that those who own the property will eventually develop. If you want the community to have a say in what eventually goes there, you should want this name this in an area to be developed. Because there are going to be several public hearings and a clear process laid out by state regulation for multiple years. And how can you be sure you will have input? Just look at the engagement we have had in just this initial step. We wouldn't have had 200 people attend 2 planning board meetings, over 100 people at the last planning board meeting, and 175 people today, without this discussion we're having right now around the areas of redevelopment. In fact, the developer could just filed plans with the planning board and then built away. And I believe that if you want to ensure the lowest possible burden to residents without benefits going direct with benefits, the lowest possible burden to residents with benefits going directly to our community, you should want to name this an area of redevelopment. As by utilizing the tools of development agreement, that $1 of taxpayer money will be used for any work done. Even the engineers and planners hired by the borough will be paid for by the development this arrangement. So with all these positives, you might be asking yourself, why wouldn't you want to name this an area of redevelopment? Well, the answer is simple. It's that you don't believe it's the role of government to be involved in these types of decisions, and that it's best left to the free market utilizing our current zoning laws. This argument does have resonance with me, as it's core to my own philosophy as well. However, the belief that not naming this an area of development will stop any new building on this property, in my estimation, is just not true. And so in the end, I not only believe it fits the criteria, but I believe it's the best way to protect the community's interests, including both the residents and that of small business owners. This is particularly difficult because of how much I respect the input of our planning board. I know work extremely hard to provide a fair and unbiased hearing of all applicants, and we're very diligent in this review and specific requests from council. Your input has been invaluable, both in informing council and providing many important considerations for this process should it receive the designation. I do believe that if it passes, there are clear benefits as laid out. Doing this right would put the word out that Bernardsville is still one of the best places in the country to live, raise a family, or run a business. I do not trust any developer at all, honestly. But I do trust our borough officials to confidently drive the process with the best interest of residents in mind. And I can promise you that I will work tirelessly to hold any developer accountable, that will not sign any agreement that doesn't fit the promises or the protections I mentioned above. And I absolutely will not vote for any agreement that uses eminent domain. I do not support eminent domain in any way. So, so I want to thank everyone for your time and your input, particularly our business owners in the Palmer property, and the many residents with whom I spoke, as well as those who attended and spoke tonight. I am grateful you took the time to educate me on your perspective so that I can feel like I can make the best decision as possible for Bernardsville future. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that I went through before coming to my decision. As an elected official, before making decisions, it's very important that we take a look at an issue from all different perspectives. I read the topology board twice. I did come to a conclusion after I read it the first time, but I knew that I had to do more diligence. I listened to the various presentations given at the Borough Council meeting. I watched the planning board Zoom meeting, all 4 hours of it. I talked to residents. I visited with business owners. I visited the property and walked around all the areas that were in the topology report to see the condition for myself. I thought about the issue for several weeks, continuing to review all the information that I gathered. In the end, my conclusion was the same that I began with. I concluded that the decision made by the planning board regarding the Palmer property was the correct one and in the best interest of the Borough of Bernardsville. And in my opinion, this property does not qualify for an area in need of development.
I'll let you choose. You want to go next, sir? It's up to me. No, I don't want, I don't always like to speak loud. If you can, after you say that, you can speak loud. Okay. So as a member of the planning board, I think I mentioned this when I first heard that the property was purchased. I was very concerned about all of that. I was concerned for the tenants that have businesses there. And I was concerned knowing the zoning that was part of the group that put it together for over a year and a half. What that meant in the consolidated property that overlaid what was used to be 3 lots. I talked about the setbacks, 5 feet on each side. So my analysis of topology that I made at the planning board is still consistent today. I believe that when the state wrote the legislation, they did it very broadly and at a very low bar on purpose. I pulled a quote, and I'm sort of going off script here because we've heard a lot of things tonight. The state did this for the following purpose, and I'm quoting their statute: to assist local governments in their efforts to arrest and reverse these conditions, promote the advancement of community interest with programs of redevelopment, rehabilitation, incentive to expand the improvement of commercial, industrial, and residential facilities. That's the reason the state gave for providing those guidances. So when I look at those lots, so let's take a step back. My assessment of the planning board was based on the following. Since the criteria were very low and very broad, all you have to do is take a helicopter or a drone and look over that property and see buildings on corners, see entrances and exits close to corners to realize that that meets, for me, the definition of faulty arrangement. So really what this comes down to, you asked the right question, the why. Why would we do this? Because I think there's a lot of properties in our town and a lot of other towns that meet the state's low threshold for this designation. So why? For me, this is the why. Central corner, congested corner. It's going to set, if the builder chooses to build something there, it's going to set zoning precedents for all neighboring buildings. There are things that I would like to see fixed above and beyond zoning. Those things are hang on, I have to go to that section of my story.
So I have major concerns about traffic and sight lines that need to be addressed, entrances and exits onto 201 and to various roads. I want to ensure that these are sufficiently assessed both for pedestrian safety and sidewalk use and open space. I want to ensure the design of these lots is consistent with the vision we all have in Bernardsville. There is no one in this room. I don't think there's anyone on the phone that wants to see large block development or large businesses in this town. These are things that through this tool that the state wrote, we can address and we can deal with in a redevelopment plan. I want to narrow the approved uses in our zoning. Someone asked, well, why is zoning not sufficient? When you do zoning for a borough like Bernardsville, you have to include all uses, banks, nail salons, all the things that we have in our town. As long as they're adhering to those uses, they can build that. I remember the outcry when TD Bank was built, and they knocked down the trees. I don't want that to happen. I want to ensure that our local small town businesses are always the centerpiece of this town, and that the developer gives us assurances. And again, I'm saying this on the record, not only for the community here, but also for the bank who is listening. I want those assurances in place in that redevelopment plan. But this is always a small business first community. I can't do that without this tool. So for me, I'm a Republican, I'm a libertarian. I don't like big government. I hate it. It's the antithesis of who I am. But as a Bernardsville resident, I have to overcome that to do the right thing for this government.
So I didn't prepare anything really to read, but some of the things that came up were important. But the question that I always ask myself is, who are they important to? And I probably am the one here, maybe Diane has been here since when this process first began. And we got an earful from people, not only in a public meeting session, but through our contact with residents. Our emails are all public. We all have a phone through the borough that people can contact us. And so for me, that's been going on since 2018. Revitalization is just a word, and it means different things to different people. And I was warned in the beginning of this process that you wait and see when people realize what revitalization encompasses, they may not like it. Why? Because it's a change. And we are averse to change. So the other thing that came up is everybody had a concern about traffic. Traffic, I can't get through that corner, my kids are late for school, the red light takes too long. My kids can't walk, it's too dangerous. And those are the people who come to me, the ones that say, I don't care if there's traffic because I'm walking and I have no other choice. I'm already at work, my kid has to walk to school and I worry about them getting through that intersection without somebody going too fast. So if you're telling me that the cars are stopped all the way to somebody's, I don't care, because if they're stopped, the kids aren't gonna get hurt. Because they won't get run over because the cars are all stopped. So that argument to me, I'm not concerned about people that have the safety and comfort of their car. Would I like to see it improved in terms of pedestrian safety? 100%. And that is the #1 driving force from what I've learned in researching what this law helps with. We can mandate whoever develops it to put in pedestrian safety. To not have people walking through that parking lot when you're trying to get your bagel and you may run them over. It hasn't happened, right? Everybody said, well, that hasn't happened, but when you talk about your worst fears, your worst nightmares, the parents who send their kids walking through the parking lot, walking from the train to the high school, that's the fears. And if that corner can be safer, and I'm telling you, there's parents and elderly folks who want to walk across town to see a friend who lives less than a mile away, but they avoid it. Why? They don't walk. Why? Because they don't want to cross that street. So, like I said, voting in favor of this is nothing personal against any individual or any corporation or any. It's a matter of public safety, pedestrian safety, and the pedestrian being able to get from one place to another with the pleasure of not having to look at a dilapidated building, of not having to push their stroller into the street, it's cold there, of not having to trip on a pothole and break their ankle. Can those things be fixed with just regular tax dollars?
Yeah.
Well, then.
We're going to have 70 units.
Same on the other side of the street. Then the answer is, this is a way to expedite it because it's taken 20 years for any of those improvements to really get through. And I'm not talking about fixing a pothole. I'm talking about real infrastructure that supports a kid who wants to bike to school or a kid who wants to walk to the library from one side of town to the other. And nobody can say that they haven't heard the expression, you're on the other side of town, the other side of town. I don't want an other side of town. I want a central town where everybody feels welcome to walk through it without fearing that something is gonna happen or that they're gonna get run over by.
So,
I went off too far. So, yes. So, yeah.
so you want to give me, you had two of them.
I have to.
All right. All right. So I'd like to move resolution 2218 185, resolution of the Borough of Bernardsville, County of Somerset, New Jersey, designating certain properties identified in block 125, 123, shown in the official tax map of the Borough of Bernardsville as a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment pursuant to local redevelopment law.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Adlai?
No.
Mr. Greenfield?
No.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yeah.
Mr. Romero?
Yes.
Mr. Romero?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, back to the regular agenda. Actually, there's chocolate chip cookies.
No one wants chocolate chip cookies. This is corrupt. No one wants chocolate chip cookies.
Respectful, we have been very respectful of you, and I'm.
I'm not anymore. No one wants chocolate chip cookies. Thank you so much.
Sidewalk down. It looks like.
There's one that
Steve, that's an all. What? Steve, that's.
I'm concerned about verification of the. The 106 hybrid, that is already. Was that one thing the word on everything?
See, my brain is so fried. Which property give me the one across the street from the fire house?
No, that's big fire.
So I have not looked ahead and worked in.
No, I think it's Thursday.
It's going under.
Yes, I believe that's.
It's not.
I don't think so.
I do not remember hearing that one. Okay, I do not.
Yeah. All right, we can continue. Okay, I would like, what are we on? Oh, here. I would open the public hearing on ordinance 2022-1930, an ordinance establishing perimeter fence regulations and supplementing and amending Article 12 of the Borough Land Development Regulations entitled zoning. And as I recall, we did get the recommendation from the planning board that it is, I can never get it right.
Not inconsistent with the.
Not inconsistent with the master plan.
mistaken.
There's double negatives there.
Have fun listening to the planning board on this one.
So, would anyone in the public like to be heard on this ordinance? Seeing none,
Hands on there.
I think that's all.
Another, yeah, so.
Mine's,
yeah, you
mine's
want-
not old. Mine's not old.
Okay, you are.
My name's Aisha,
Nate, just give us your name and address.
my name's Aisha Faley. I live at 29 Mullins Lane in Bernardsville. I was informed about this ordinance today, actually, and I read through it quickly. And I just wanted to voice my opinion that the hedging should be taken out of this. I don't understand why hedging was included in it when someone can easily add trees, a line of trees, and those trees would not be, held under this ordinance. We have a hedge on our property. We moved here 8 years ago. That hedge was here before we even moved here. And the reason our hedge is there is because Mullins is very busy and it gives us a sense of privacy. I feel some protection from the roadway because there are a lot of cars that go by and I have 3 young kids. And it blocks some sound and it's important, especially I think right now with all of the break-ins and robberies, I don't want to be so exposed to everybody on the street. So that's why I'm speaking out today, and I would like you guys to consider removing hedging from this fence ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for your information, anything that is currently in existence can stay in existence. This is moving forward. It's not, I mean, you would not have to take down your hedge.
So with no, I have a question on that one though. If I have an 8-foot hedge in front of my house right now, and I let it grow to 10 feet, that's okay as long, so if I have any hedge on my property, whether it's 2 foot, 4 foot, I can let it grow as high as I want after this ordinance is, because are we going measuring hedges or?
That's a good question, because most things in zoning don't grow.
And frankly, fence breaks, you can take it down, but a hedge you can cut anytime you want.
Yeah.
You might damage it, but you can still cut it.
So I understand the
Yes,
concern.
that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a very good point, but you are absolutely right that anything that's currently designed or constructed and in place is grandfathered in. So, for example, you have a 12-foot tall arborvitae, to ask you to trim that would kill them. So that's not what the intent of this is. So what we are going to do is, because this is limited to specific zones, we are going to document every existing fence, hedge, and all that. So if someone comes in with a zoning permit, we know it's new. Or if someone calls to complain that your hedge is too tall, we have on record that it's grandfathered. So it's not a concern.
So can we increase, because that's my biggest concern in this. One of the realities in Burnsville is I think property lines are so historic in many places, they're a little all over the place. Can we strengthen the language in a way here that says any existing structure, hedge to the young lady's comment, will have precedent? Can we strengthen that language, Jack?
I think it's.
Or is it implied?
It's grandfathered.
Yeah, it would be the equivalent of non-conforming structure. If you've got a garage too close to the property line, under the new zoning ordinance, it remains as a non-conforming structure. So the hedge could remain, but Jay's question was a good one.
Right.
And I've never seen it before, so I think it would come down to a matter of enforcement. And Tom says basically, you've got a 6-foot hedge now, it goes to 8 feet, they're not gonna enforce it. It's impossible to write an ordinance to anticipate every situation. And usually ordinances like this would be enforced as a result of a neighbor's complaint. So it's up to you all, how you want to deal with it.
So your grandfather you could have a hedge and you grow it to whatever height you wanted to.
But technically, you don't have the grandfather to the current height. So
Yeah.
it's an issue.
If it's not a safety, whatever, it's not a safety, traffic or anything.
I'll just note that there are other elements of the code dealing with site triangles and overhanging hedges and tree limbs and stuff like that. So if yours got 2 on Wheelby, we would address it, but not under the zoning code, under other elements.
So can I make a recommendation? I'm sorry, we're in the middle of public session. But the recommendation I make is can we go back and look at some of this language to clarify? Because I listened to planning board when they did designate this with a double negative. It's not against the. And when we did it, the person on the planning board actually said, I didn't intend for them to use this language. He said, I gave them a draft, I was expecting that they were going to.
I suggest we take out the reference to hedges. I worried about it, it came from the housing committee. And the truth, I don't think it makes any sense.
So can we strike item 5 to the planning board, C5 to the planning board send back? Without, is that a material change that requires to go back to them?
I don't think it is because we're not adding to it.
That makes me partially happier.
Sorry, Tom, when we were reviewing this afternoon, there was a reason I remember I thought you said that there were a reason why the hedges were included.
Yeah, so I'll go on my diatribe of streetscaping. You know, the reason for the ordinance is we're working towards an ideal, right? And we actually have a very weak fence ordinance. But in some of the quaintest areas that you've seen, it's a very organized streetscape with either hedges or fences, and those frontages are pretty well regulated in a lot of these places. It may be a stretch for us because we're just moving into this. And I think if you just get control over the fences for now, that would be a good step, and then study the hedges a little bit more. Yeah. So sometimes people do grow hedges though in their front yards in order to hide trucks parked on front lawns and other things like that too. So I think that's what the committee was trying to balance out is, just trying to, clean things up.
I think people, the intersections up and put hedges up, so that headlights from coming in. I would suggest that we remove C5, the reference to hedges, because I don't know how you enforce it.
I told you already. Okay.
Yeah.
I get those behind. Okay.
So I'm hesitant on this one. I just haven't really seen, I haven't heard this as a problem. I understand that we have a weak fence ordinance. I don't know if that's bad. A lot of ways, I look at, we have less ordinance and less regulation in many ways than some other towns in this area. That's less of a burden on the resident, kind of good thing. So I very much appreciate the spirit of what this was approached. I know it was worked hard on, but even without the hedge aspect, which I think the member of the public that spoke on it raised that very well. I'm personally hesitant on implementing this.
One of the things that I think can be detrimental over time is stockade fences that are 6 foot tall in people's front yards and very small lots. And I think it really takes away from the streetscape, particularly in walkable neighborhoods, and it takes away from the uniformity and the pattern that you're trying to establish. So I would say, even if we did move forward with this ordinance, I would really encourage council from a planning perspective to start looking at this, create options, specify that there's certain fences you can put up in certain zones, particularly when you start radiating out in the downtown. Because it'll help contribute to a cohesive whole.
So I'm going to put my old housing and zoning add-on for a second. One of the issues in housing and zoning is the 0.1% of people that do bad things, right? That's really what you're trying to avoid. I'm rereading the specifications and I'm reading them from a perspective that if I was only looking at this from the zoning, what are the types of things that I want to not happen, right? Just the bad person. So when I look at section D, prohibited fence materials, I think most folks in our town think that barbed wire, razor wire, other wires that have sharp edges, electrified fences, steel chain link things shouldn't be in front of lawns. I think those parameters for me are okay, right? I don't think many of our residents want to see those in the front yard. Now, if we've got an electric fence already, that's there, but going forward, we don't want that. I then look at where this becomes a little grayer for me. Maximum height requirements. So they're saying 6 feet is the maximum height you can put in the front yard. And it's not really, what was that, Tom? 4 feet in the front yard. 4 feet in the front yard and 6 in the back. I don't think in Bernardsville we want to have fences higher than 4 feet newly constructed in front yards. So for that, it's very vague other than those stipulations. I think I'm okay.
One question Tom actually was nice enough to spend some time walking me through some of the concerns and I think he's got some great points. I guess, Tom, my question to you, from a zoning perspective, I've seen sidewalks with rock walls coming up, part of the landscape. I would say they look great. I mean, they were designed long ago. Those are going to clearly come down at some point, right? They're just eventually going to have to be redone under this ordinance, or and I'm just not clear. Does that mean that they can't? Because that would be repaired. Can you not put one back up? They'd have to redesign, or could they put like a block wall or I'm saying a rock wall? I'm talking some of the older walls.
They can repair.
Okay.
They can repair.
But then start from scratch and build a new in the same place. Because the general rules of non-conforming structure would apply. So if you had an existing stone wall and you just repaired it, you could do that. You could replace some of the stones or the gravity, but you couldn't take it down and put up a new one in that same place if it violated some of these setback requirements.
And that's really the can I make 2 more points? I just want to make 2 more points. Right now, under the Uniform Property Maintenance Code, right? If something is in disrepair, let's say it's a fence. So let's say it's a picket fence. Let's say a couple slots are broken and hanging. Under the code, we can ask you to remove those broken slots. Okay, but if you put up a new fence, and there are some new fences, but they weren't permitted, they were part of the planning board approval. Under the planning board approval, we can take that approval if that fence is broken and say, you need to restore this because it's part of your approval. The same thing happens if you issue a zoning permit for a fence and you're required to maintain it. So we have on record what you said you would install, what it would look like, and like 4 or 5 slots are missing. Your permit is for this fence, and this fence isn't complete without those slots being replaced. So it also gives us an enforcement tool. Because I think that is a complaint we do get. That is a complaint we have to deal with quite a bit and say, all we can do is ask them to remove those slots that are just hanging rather than hanging in and storing it.
Let me ask you a very specific question to follow up to Jay's. So as you know, there are a lot of historic walls in this town. Let's say that one of those historic walls, the homeowner says, you know, something like this wall is done, it's falling apart, it's no longer viable. I want to knock it down, build another wall in the same spot, maybe use slightly different materials that are more modern, maybe use block with an exterior overlay that maintain the look and feel of its historic nature. Could they do that if it was on the setback?
No. And you know, but to that point, couldn't they wait for variance? To that point, when we were doing the walk on Old Army.
Yeah, Old Army is exactly the.
It's like we wanted, you know, you cannot get a sidewalk here because all those walls are in the right of way.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
So there is an advantage to that.
I give you your point on that. I'm thinking the ball pot, like there are some fences that frankly I feel uncomfortable walking by the walls, they're leaning so much. that if they go, it's gonna hurt someone. And, but if I were the property owner and I had the money, I'd wanna put it right back up again, because I think it looks great. It's just a matter of, it's not, it's not set back, but it needs to go back up, and it's gonna be a major, and I know that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
But all of that, you're not throwing away the materials, you're just assembling it.
But I guess.
Apply for variance.
But that would be so expensive though. And I'm sort of thinking, what's.
There's also a provision about the zoning officer, approval of the zoning officer, if the police officer is not in the right of way or.
So thinking back, the thing that, if there's no additional hardship to the owner, so if they're deciding to rebuild a fence, whether they build it at 3 feet or 5 feet, there's no additional hardship other than the 2 foot.
So just to put you at ease on that issue, right? So the reason we said 10 feet, right, is because in some of our denser neighborhoods, there's a big cry out for sidewalks, right? So the possibility of installing a sidewalk where everyone has a fence in the right of way just kind of makes that unfeasible. So we can start now by saying it's 10 feet. Is where we want this fence line to start. But if you read the code, as Councilman Rico just said, we have the flexibility to approve it not all the way there. Somewhere in between, based on input from the chief and safety concerns. In other words, if it's not feasible that a sidewalk is ever going to get there, we're going to approve it. We're going to put it in the middle of the sidewalk area. And that's a problem.
Jay, the properties that you were thinking of on Alcott, are the walls there for, I guess, retaining walls?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're holding back on.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about too, that they're really retaining walls rather than.
Yeah, that's
rather
not
than,
a wall.
you know,
Yeah, that's not fence. That's
Yeah.
a piece of infrastructure.
Yeah, it is infrastructure.
I'll move it for a vote.
Are we taking out hedges?
Yes,
Yeah.
mine is section 5.
I didn't close the public session.
Oh.
Would anyone else in the public like to be heard on this ordinance? All right, then I will close the public session. So are we removing the hedges? Yes. Yeah.
So I think you should do it in several places. In A, fence is covered, the next to last sentence is the current fence does not include hedges except as provided in paragraph 3.
Okay.
I think we should put a period after does not include hedges. Big add except as clear as provided in paragraph 3.
Okay.
And actually that you can see anyway. I changed that one.
Well,
I never take out subparagraph Roman numeral, small Roman numeral 5 in paragraph C.
okay.
So if someone moved to amend it that way, and second it, and then you'll vote on it
And then-
as amended.
I moved to pass ordinance.
I'll move to amend.
Okay, second.
All right, I'll move to amend what Jack said.
Jackson,
Okay, that
and I
works.
second to amend.
Yes.
Okay,
And voice vote on that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now you can vote on the ordinance as amended.
All right.
Substitute.
I move to pass ordinance 2022-1930 on final, as amended on final reading and adopt as published.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
As the mayor.
Yeah.
Rivera.
No. Yes.
Mr. Katie.
I'd like to thank Tom for his time today on this one because I was not really for it, but yes.
You convinced me to.
I was on the fence.
Ms. Mayfield.
Yes. No pun intended.
Yes.
It does work with the recommendation.
We didn't pass it yet, part of it should be in office tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Anisha, for the
Thanks.
hedge comment on it.
Chad, would you like to move the next ordinance?
Yeah, sorry, I have to go back and the agenda. So I'll move, this is the bond ordinance, right?
Yes.
So can I make a comment before or no? After?
You can make a comment.
So just for the members of the public and also for the council, just know, so this is a bond ordinance 1.3 million. This includes the rebuild of the Bernards Ave plus ancillary streets. This is a large bond number. And I know we've been talking as Al and I came out of finance committee, the debt reduction plan. This exceeds our debt reduction plan, just to be fully transparent with the public. However, what we've done is amended our debt plans to remove debt, withdraw and additional debt in the subsequent years offset. We believe this project is important enough to get it done now, instead of waiting 2 or 3 years to be able to afford another debt plan. So we've revised the debt plan, and I'll move the ordinance 2022-1932 bond ordinance appropriating 1.3 million and authorizing the issuance of 1.235 million bonds or notes of the Borough of Bernardsville for the improvement of various roads authorized to be undertaken in and by the Borough of Bernardsville in the County of Somerset, New Jersey. Be introduced at a public hearing scheduled for a meeting at 7 p.m. Monday, September 25th.
Second. All in favor?
Abstain.
All right, money, finance. All right, let's see. Alan, would you like to move this?
I have a question about this one, so maybe I shouldn't. move it.
Oh, okay, this is the house on the corner of Mill and Claremont.
Correct.
And so we are amending the redevelopment plan to include it.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Right.
that's not.
Yeah.
Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
this is the equity, the equity.
This is that one specific property.
Yes.
Yeah.
It went before the planning board,
Yeah.
the end of the meeting.
It's the brick house on the corner
Okay.
Was supposed to be in there.
of the mill and Claremont.
Plan.
So what you're.
Yeah, the pre-read didn't convey that, but I do remember the conversation.
Just so you understand, the amendments
Thank you.
that you're allowing are in conformance with the plan they submitted already to the planning board. The planning board was about to approve it, and then they realized there would be issues because it conflicted with the zone. So all you're really doing is changing the front yard setback, the side yard setback, how you measure the height because of the slope, right? So depending on where you stand, the sidewalk's always moving on that block. So it's a better calculation and where you measure it to. The building doesn't gain a story or anything of that nature. Impervious coverage, in terms of how much does it cover, and the sidewalk and the landscape. So they're minor changes.
And I can look at that in more detail. This is only moving it for the public session.
I have
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
you
this
just said going back to the planning board.
correct. So it goes to the planning board has to approve the amendments, comes back here, you adopt it, then they'll file the plan, and at that point, they will be informed.
So if you look at the zone overlay, I mean, I don't know if you see my, essentially, the zone overlay did that.
Right.
And we think that there was a mistake in the way the line was drawn. It really belonged to the other zone, in my opinion.
We amended the zone to have these little.
Thank you.
For this particular law.
Yeah, and we're just introducing it now.
Right. I move that ordinance 2022-1933, ordinance of the Borough of Bernardsville, County of Somerset, New Jersey, adopting the amended redevelopment plan for block 71, lot 6, as shown on the official tax map of the Borough of Bernardsville, pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law NJSA 48-12A-1 TSEQ, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, published for the law, and a public hearing be scheduled for a meeting beginning 7 p.m. on Tuesday, October 11, 2022.
All in favor? All right, Gina. next one.
I move that ordinance 2022-1934, revising the type and number of positions in the Vernonville Police Department and amending chapter 2 of the Borough Code entitled Administration. Be introduced by title, passed on first reading, published in the law, and the public hearing be scheduled for a meeting at 7 p.m. Monday, September 26, 2022.
Second.
Can I just ask a question on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. No major, I really want the Bernardsville Police Department to be able to operate within, operate as most effectively as they see themselves operating. I just think for the public hearing, it'd be helpful for me to hear, whether it's the chief or the committee, just some rationale as to why. And I guess my main concern is just ensuring that it doesn't create too many layers from a reporting responsibility standpoint, that information is still going to be able to flow up to the chief, considering you're kind of creating some additional more top heavy structure, if you will. So it doesn't mean I have this concern, it's just, I would like to hear a little bit more.
You want to explain it right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, oh, I'm sorry.
No.
What do you want me to?
No, yes, go ahead.
We discussed this in like in public safety. meeting,
Right.
so Tom's over.
Yeah.
So what we're doing, so right now the structure is a chief, a captain, and lieutenant. lieutenant is vacant. And then we have a number of sergeants. One of them oversees the detective bureau. What we're proposing to do is have a chief, a captain, 2 lieutenants, and not have the sergeant in the detective bureau. The way we want to organize, so we have the chief, the captain, the 2 lieutenants. 1 lieutenant can just become an expert in patrol. And the other lieutenant can become an expert and just focus solely on licensing of officers, training of officers, eventually pursuing accreditation, training, background checks, firearms, OPRAs, records management. All those things happen now, but if we just focus on the first 3 of accreditation, training, and licensing, it's important to have a superior officer putting those things in place and then mandating compliance with them. The reason for the shift, to anyone who's spoken with the chief over the past year, over the past 2 to 3 years, there's been an avalanche of regulations coming down on police departments. So it really requires not just the establishment of policy, but it also requires proof that we're following through on those policies and documenting them. And so we are willing to sacrifice the leadership in the detective bureau for now, because we know we can't have everything. But we just think this is a greater risk management, from a risk management perspective. It's a much smarter investment to make with our resources. I'm going to do everything we can to keep that cost neutral. Thank you.
So I have a question as well. So to the extent possible, so a couple things that I noticed in going through this. Number one, and this is no percentages changed with the implementation of this. In other words, 40% of our personnel in the police department currently and in the future will be supervisors, meaning sergeants, lieutenants, captains, or chiefs. And that's not changing. It's just adjusting a lieutenant to a sergeant. I guess I would say observation is that with this, we will need to promote 1 captain potentially and 2 lieutenants from our sergeant ranks, depending on how the organization comes together. So it's something to think about. But the other thing I would point out is just, I would be interested, and I don't want to create a lot of extra work for you, Tom, but is this consistent? We talked about it a little in the meeting. I would like to know a little bit more about the consistency in terms of other departments of our size with 40% of the officers. And you don't have to answer it now, but it's like, I realized we said it was kind of consistent with what with what Bernard's Township is doing. But if there's any way we can get information from surrounding communities that's not going to take hours and hours to do, but just say, hey, look, this is consistent. I just
We'll work on that.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just respond to that, be glad to do that for you, but many of our surrounding communities are smaller than us, and they don't need as many supervisors to supervise their officers. So you may see a lesser ratio of superior officers to junior officers in those size departments. And as we discussed in the public safety meeting for the benefit of the other people on the committee, one of the reasons we're doing this is to provide for accountability. The state is dumping a lot of regulations on us, licensing. You can't have officers who do not have authority to enact policy procedures to direct other officers being responsible for that, because they're simply not helping. You can't hold them accountable for that. So you have to have somebody of superior rank to be able to facilitate that. So really, we're repositioning the department going forward to be successful in meeting all of the obligations and the mandates that are being placed upon us by the chief. We're going to be accountable to the prosecutor in the state that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. I need to have people accountable to me to ensure that our officers are doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we're doing how we're supposed to be doing. So regardless of what other communities are doing, and again, we also talked about the fact that many people are hiring other personnel. We're doing this right now without hiring any additional personnel. We're really trying to work within the budget constraints that we have and do something that's basically cost neutral. course, and I know this is redundant to you because you were.
No.
But it may not be for the rest of the council, so we will certainly try to find that information for you prior to the next meeting. Hopefully have a better understanding. Thanks for coming.
Okay, good. So you moved it, I seconded it, you seconded it, so we just need a voice vote. All in favor? Vote? No, okay, we're good. Moving on to resolutions, we have 22-173A through 184, 22-184. Any that you want to pull out or have questions on?
Hey, before you put it, I'd like to make it clear on the record, with respect to the two train station
Yeah.
resolutions.
I saw your correspondence.
Yes, since 1985, the leases that provided that the New Jersey Transit's responsible for major structural repairs.
Like roof and all that, yeah,
And it's been that way for
Yes.
how many years is that now? 37 years. In this one, they changed it to make the borough responsible for all repairs.
whoa,
And my recommendation would be if they insist on that, that we tell them you can have your train station back. Because, you know, it's an old train station. It's on the register of historic places, so you need to, it's a lot more expensive to repair.
yeah,
And at the very least, I'd like to see it so that it was capped at the amount of money we had in the railroad trust fund at that time. So I'd just like to make it clear on the record that if they insist on that, you know, I'm not going to sign off on the contract, on the lease until I come back to you. And secondly, because of that, I've added to resolution 182, that it's contingent upon the borough's entering into a lease with New Jersey Transit. So I think 177 already had it subject to my approval, so I think that's covered, but I would like to have it in the record that I have a major objection to that change.
right, so we can still do this. We
Yes.
need to hold up the whole process
I'd like to do it tonight so it can continue.
Right.
with, you know, MV.
with MV, right,
And
so.
it's on the place.
And I can see you already responded to them. with
Yes.
Comments.
Correct. So Jack's a 4-year renewal. I'm assuming that's at the sole discretion of the borough.
It's at the sole discretion of the borough.
Okay, so it's, MV doesn't have the option, it's the borough.
They get a 9-year.
Well, theirs would be the same way. Theirs would be 5 years with 4-year option. But that, their 4-year option would depend on our exercising our 4-year option in New Jersey Transit.
So
So we make the ultimate decision.
So 177 is contingent upon you working out the details with New Jersey Transit.
Correct.
Okay, or cap, okay.
So what,
Then 182 is contingent upon the approval of the lease.
That's good.
With,
Yeah, we don't have a list of transit that can enter into
Right.
service.
is the interested party acceptable or accepting of a 5-year lease with an option to renew?
yeah.
Yes.
4-year option.
Because I wouldn't accept that.
Yeah.
So if I was gonna put money into a property like that, I'd want it to be.
The reason it's 9 years is transit people have to go back to their board of trustees to get their approval for
Yeah.
anything over 9
And you
years.
see, it took us 4 months just to get this far.
Yes. And then they snuck in.
So if they accept it, I'm not gonna.
What are the financials like? I'm just curious, is it, I realize they have to put a ton of capital improvements, a lot of capital improvements. Like, is this, in comparing this to rent within Bernardsville, or like, do we have any kind of?
It's probably a good deal for them. But on the other hand, when we've gone out to bid on 4 or 5 of the past subtenants, we've gotten really high rents and really good.
Really bad tenant. And they didn't pay the rent.
And they all
keep
went
them
into
out.
default almost immediately. I've been in court 3 or 4 times. The last one, we kept 147,000, I think, that we had on deposit. So, you know, we've discussed this over the years. I think it's more important that we get a good tenant who improves the property because it's such an important part of downtown.
Yeah.
And we can't, the money doesn't go into general revenues anyway. We can only use it for station improvements.
Oh.
So it's really academic.
Yeah.
So the rent revenue can only be used to
For
improve.
the train station.
Right.
Does it have to be the physical structure? Or can it be, because I know that they own a large percentage of the lot, et cetera.
You know, we can pave the lot.
It can even be things like crosswalks across in front of us. It has to be commuter related. So
like the sidewalk in front of
Exactly.
yeah, that's, yeah.
So I didn't see it, maybe I didn't read it thoroughly enough, but isn't there a percentage of profit that New Jersey Transit keeps as well?
No, under the current lease, we have to give them 30%, but under this one, we only pay a license fee of like $300.
$300,
It goes up to $450 or something over the course of the lifetime of the lease. But like I said,
But then they repair, then they gain.
yeah, but if they're not gonna be responsible for major structural repairs, then, you know, we could lose our shirts.
Can we make that the tenant responsible for major structural repairs?
You know, I can't imagine they would assume that liability.
Well, you know, if they come back, offer to buy it again. We tried to buy it.
Yes.
We'll sell it. So if, yeah, they want us to make major repairs, then let us have it or give it to us, not for sale.
That's right. We don't wanna buy it. without-
Donate it.
And if we do buy it, we ought to get engineering inspections to make sure it's not gonna
Yeah.
fall down tomorrow.
Yeah.
So in any event, just so the record's clear,
Okay,
that's where we stand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other ones that, anyone has any questions on? I see people joining the Hungarian Cooperative. That's a great cooperative, by the way. We used it, from the Chester School District when I was there, and they're really very good.
Going back to 182, sorry. I knew we talked about Hungarian Cooperative. I don't know if I have enough information to approve it. You know, it was a good conversation just had. Some of us make me a bit more comfortable. I just feel like, first of all, I think it's excellent that we've gotten this far with the train station, without a doubt. We've been working towards that for a long time. And people are very excited about MB, a great addition to our community. And I personally am excited to have them there. There's just a lot of pieces in this, you know, how it affects parking. They know they're going to invest money there, but I don't know specifically what it's going to. And then I had a very similar comment around competitiveness of rent, you know, and how that manifests itself. And so I think we're trying to expedite it because it came quick. I'd be very comfortable personally, and those can feel differently, authorizing 177, but I personally don't feel ready to proceed with 182.
I think this is where we're approving negotiations with.
Basically.
Yes,
It
we
would
are
be
not
subject-
approving a set locked in lease. This
That's
is
right.
for us to begin the contract negotiations as to how this.
Okay, I think that was very detailed.
Well, those are things we discussed in as part of the proposal.
Some of the substantive things like the rent, we can pull them both tonight. The only reason I wanted to do the underlying was to do the transit tonight was so we can proceed talking to MB. So we could pull them both and I'll come back at the next.
Well, I'm
meeting.
definitely comfortable. I think we should certainly proceed personally, 177.
Well,
But does it affect things if we wait on 182? And my other question would be then, would you come back? Does the council get the ability to approve the final lease
yes.
with 182?
Yeah.
So we would just be authorizing negotiation tonight and then it would come back to us?
Let's pull them both tonight. Because really, there's no, well, if you want to make the transit lease on, let's pull the.
Yeah, you guys can just.
And authorize me to continue negotiations.
Concern is I don't want to risk losing.
And
the
big.
tenant.
Right.
And even if this is kind of, you know, based on a lot of ifs, at least it shows that we're still committed.
So did you say we would actually vote on finals? This is,
Yes, but it would include the rents and things that are set
yeah.
forth in here.
so the rent would be set.
Rent concession, you know, we're agreeing, you would be agreeing to those. things.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah. you put your investment.
He's put
True, and to me-
But we did.
I don't know, that seems pretty close to what a restaurant would put in to fix up any place to make. I mean,
The difference here is at best, they're gonna get 9 years. So they're risking, you know, if you put 650,000 in a restaurant, you're probably anticipating the useful life of 20 years or so.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is, under the terms of the lease, transit has the right, and this has always been the case, to terminate on 6 months' notice. Now, they're probably not going to, but there's that risk.
There is that
So
risk.
we're not really just.
I don't think landlords is concerned.
No, I would agree with that.
And the other thing, if you know how long it took us to find a tenant, that's the other thing.
Yeah, so we're asking for, I think we're asking for 2 more weeks on just understanding a little bit more, because I know that the 192 came to us on Friday, right? It was, so can we approve 177 and wait 2 weeks on 192 so we can?
Yes.
I mean, look, so if the majority wants to move forward with 192, or 182, sorry, I mean, I agree with Al, we could have another 2 weeks.
Why don't you adopt 177 and direct me to come back with a negotiated sublease with the Definition next time.
I like that.
I like that.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So can we do another modified as Jack said?
Yes.
So I move to modify,
Wait. So 182, we're changing to authorizing Jack to,
No,
no.
177.
177.
We're authorizing
182 will hold.
the lease with transit, subject to their
right,
change in that provision, and directing me to come back
All
to
in
the
one.
next meeting with a sublease
okay,
negotiated with MV.
so it's all wrapped into one.
All wrapped.
And then we'll pull 182.
Okay.
so and that was, we're modifying resolution 177, correct?
Yes.
So I will move to,
Hold on.
oh, sorry.
Two questions about other resolutions. Anyone else? I don't know. Were you done?
No,
Okay, sorry. I had, question on 174. So we have the hardship exemptions.
Yes.
We get them maybe once every meeting. Do we really have to put this on the agenda for every single hardship that we continue to just approve? Or can we just tell the Public Works Committee that they say, if you guys approve it, charge them whatever's for the ordinance and we move on? Or does it have to come to us as a resolution? And I don't know, Jack, yes.
The way it's set up now has to be.
Yeah, all hardship.
We can change it.
Us.
Public
Public
Works
Works
didn't approve it,
approvals.
wanted the council to see it and be aware of it.
Right.
And if the council has a problem with it, then we should discuss, we also discussed the sliding scale for fees, whether we should increase them to maybe dissuade people from doing this. But on the other side, the gas company, the way they do the repaving part of it has been they've done a very good job, so it really hasn't been that detrimental to the roadway or to John Dow's. So, I mean,
John, I mean, we've got 3 of our council members on Public Works, right? And we see this first. I mean, I don't know what everybody else did, but I mean, I don't know what you guys.
I honestly, if 3 people on it, I think we can save time.
so Jack, I'm getting the sense we want to amend the ordinance. Yes? Am
Yeah,
I,
we can amend the ordinance.
consensus on that?
Yes.
I'm just.
We can just have Public Works do it. If Public Works feels as though they want it to come to council, obviously, they
agreed.
want to read a resolution. No, it's fine. Right?
Yeah, I thought we could have it, but we just thought it would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to trust you.
We talk about
Whoever is on Public Works.
We'll let Public Works deal with it.
Okay, that's just for future, and then, of course, I had my question on 178, I did not get a response from, Doug or John, but actually.
Yeah, we did.
I'm checking my, I know, I don't. I'm checking, I was literally checking my.
I told.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I don't know what I did with it, I must have accidentally completed it, so I'll have to go.
Yeah, and we said it all. It's been an ongoing problem up there.
Okay, but it was nothing that we did.
No, it happens before we paid.
Right, and we just never, we didn't fix it when we.
Exactly, and then they tried to fix it after the road was paved, and lowered the whole basin, and it didn't work, didn't solve the problem. So they're all getting flooded up there. Thank you. Okay, so I'm asking for a motion for 22-173A to 122-184 without 182.
So I.
And amended 177.
I moved it resolution 22-173A to 22-184, with amended 177A and removing 22-182 be adopted.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ambeline?
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Minor correction, it's not 177A, it's just 177, but yes, whatever.
Just a minute.
Chad, you. Yes.
Okay.
Romero?
Yes.
Yes.
Can we have a 5-minute recess? We've been here for 3.5 hours. Oh, I get to decide.